Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Candice Rogers. Candice Rogers, also known as Candy, was born on July 18, 1948 was either. After her birth, her parents divorced, but her father remained in the same city, allowing Candy to spend time with him regularly. As a child, she enjoyed the outdoors, often going for walks and playing with her dog. She also dreamed of joining the Campfire Girls, a girls-only organization similar to the Boy Scouts. In 1959, Candy joined the Campfire Girls at the age of 9. One of the organization's activities was selling mints door-to-door. On Friday, March 6th, she planned to sell mints after school. After returning home, having dinner, and playing with her dog. Then she took about 8 boxes of mints and headed out. Candy had planned to walk around her neighborhood and sell sweets to the people living nearby. To ensure that the other girls selling sweets in the area didn't overlap, each girl was assigned specific streets to visit. However, when Candy failed to return home by her expected time of 6 p.m., her mom started to worry. Candy's mom and grandfather set out to search for her, but they couldn't find her anywhere in the neighborhood. As darkness fell, the search party grew, with family, friends and neighbors joining in to help. Despite their combined efforts, they were unable to find any sign of Candy. Convinced that something was wrong, Candy's mom decided to call the police. As the police joined the search, they began by questioning the neighbors. Their investigation revealed that she had only made one sale, suggesting that something may have happened to her soon after she left home. A witness reported seeing Candy on a nearby street around 6:30 p.m., which seemed unusual since her mother was already searching for her by then. Candy's grandfather reported some unusual incidents after going to search for his granddaughter. On the same street where a witness last saw Candy, he nearly got hit by a speeding green 1956 Ford. Although the police distributed the car's description, they were unable to locate it due to the lack of a license plate number. Later, at around 9 p.m., several mint boxes belonging to Candy were found along the road near a bridge, increasing the concern for her safety. The police intensified their search in this area, combing the riverbanks and a nearby wooded zone throughout the night. Unfortunately, Candy was not found. As news of Candy's disappearance spread, local newspapers covered the story, and it eventually gained statewide media attention. In 1959, child disappearances near their homes were extremely rare, making Candy's case even more disturbing. The residents of her town had not experienced a similar incident in many years, leaving them deeply shaken and concerned. The next morning, police increased their search by deploying more personnel and resources, including mounted police, off-road vehicles, and military members. A large number of volunteers from the city and surrounding areas joined the search, swelling the total number of search to over 1,000 people. This made it one of the largest searches in the country's history at the time. The search area was expanded to 11 miles around Candy's home, but despite this, no signs of her were found. Tragically, on the same day, a search helicopter clipped power lines and crashed, claiming the lives of 3 of its 5 crew members. Undeterred, the search efforts continued for many days, but yielded no results. Police officers worked tirelessly in multiple day and night to try and locate Candy. Investigators also followed up on approximately 750 tips received in the early days of the search, but unfortunately, every lead ended in a dead end. 15 days after Candy went missing, 2 military personnel on a hunting trip in the woods west of Spokane stumbled upon children's shoes on the ground. Recognizing the shoes as possibly belonging to Candy, they immediately reported their discovery to the police. The shoes were confirmed by Candy's grandfather. He said they were indeed hers. After discovering this clue, police conducted a search of the woods and they quickly found Candy's body, partially hidden in the underbrush and covered with pine branches. A medical examination revealed that the cause of death was strangulation using a torn piece of fabric from Candy's own skirt. Injuries on Candy's hands and feet suggested that she had been tied up, although no ropes were found near. The police investigation showed that Candy had been sexually abused. During their search of the crime scene, the police discovered a green car seat cover nearby, although they were unable to establish if it was linked to the murder. A small, purple stain was also found on Candy's clothing, which gave off a strong scent of grape-flavored chewing gum. Despite all efforts, the police still could not find relevance between this stain and the case. With limited clues, police searched for any clues that might help them find the killer. They thoroughly investigated numerous tips and looked into the potential involvement of hundreds of people. This group included neighbors, people of interest, and previously convicted individuals. However, the investigation eventually narrowed down to focus on one particular suspect, Alfred Braves, a 50-year-old man. The reason Alfred became a suspect because, on the same day Candy's body was found, he died in his car, near where Candy's boxes of mints were found. Additionally, Alfred lived near Candy's home. Upon finding his body, police discovered a rope and a strand of hair that was not Alfred's, which belonged to a woman. Investigators obtained a search warrant for Alfred's home. Upon searching his house, they discovered numerous newspaper articles detailing sex crimes against women and girls. The police also found that several women had accused him of harassment, and even his own wife had suspicions about his involvement in Candy's murder. However, despite the suspicious circumstances, the police were unable to find any concrete evidence that directly linked Alfred to the crime, and investigators were hesitant to clear him of suspicion. In the face of a lack of evidence, detectives shifted their focus to other suspects. Over several months, the police diligently investigated each person, but every lead turned out to be a dead end. Later, investigators found another suspect, a serial killer named Hugh Morse. He was arrested in 1961 for a string of crimes. The important evidence that Hugh was involved in Candy's case was that he had a habit of chewing grape-flavored gum, which was similar to a substance found on Candy's clothes. Furthermore, additionally, he had committed 2 murders in Spokane a few months after Candy's death, further increasing the suspicion of his involvement in the crime. Hugh began committing crimes quite early. His first arrest was for assaulting a woman, but the penalty was lenient. He was merely discharged from the army. He then went on to commit multiple robberies in Los Angeles and served only a 6-month sentence. After being released, Hugh tricked 2 8-year-old girls into going with him to a secluded area by promising them ice cream. He then sexually assaulted them. This crime led to his arrest. However, instead of going to prison, a medical commission determined that he was a sexual psychopath. As a result, he was placed in a mental health facility for a period of 2 years to receive treatment. After his release, doctors thought Hugh had fully recovered. He then moved to Spokane, where he began peeping into women's windows. His actions took a more severe turn in November 1959, when he broke into the home of a 28-year-old woman and acted violently, ultimately killing her. 10 months later, Hugh entered the residence of a 69-year-old woman, repeating the same crimes as before. A month after that, he assaulted another woman, stabbing her multiple times. Although she sustained severe injuries, she managed to survive the attack. After escaping the city, he continued a devastating crime spree over several months, brutally attacking and sexually assaulting numerous women and girls with a knife, ultimately claiming the lives of 2 more victims. To evade capture, Hugh constantly moved from city to city and state to state, until the FBI intervened. He was eventually added to the list of the country's 10 most wanted fugitives, which ultimately led to his capture. Hugh received multiple life sentences, but his troubles didn't end there. He attempted to end his life in his cell. Fortunately, the guards intervened in time and saved him, allowing him to continue serving his sentence. Detectives in Candy's case visited Hugh in prison multiple times, trying to gather information about the case. Despite repeatedly denying any involvement, he took a polygraph test to prove his innocence. The test results suggested he was telling the truth, but these results are considered unreliable and therefore cannot be used as evidence in court. At the time of the murder, Hugh lived in Spokane, and furthermore, he had a criminal record of similar incidents that made investigators suspicious. They initially considered him the primary suspect due to he familiar with this neighborhood. But he consistently denied any involvement. Although they suspected him, they did not have enough evidence to conclude his involvement in the crime. The police then shifted their attention to another suspect, 49 years old Howard Barnett. He was arrested in February 1960 for allegedly molesting a minor girl. Shortly after his arrest, he ended his life right in his cell at the Spokane police station. Hugh wrote a cryptic message in his own blood on the wall before his death, stating, "He have a sin before the Lord." However, it wasn't until after he passed away that his wife became aware of his arrest. She then asked the police if they thought Hugh might have been involved in Candy's death. Despite several investigations, no concrete evidence was found to connect Hugh to the crime. The police continued to pursue new leads over the years, looking into other possible suspects. A woman came forward with information, stating that on the day of Candy's disappearance, she saw a green car following her. Police reopened the case multiple times but were unable to gather evidence linking the green car or any other. The case was reopened periodically over the years but always hit a dead end. The investigation into Candy's murder was complicated by numerous false confessions. 13 individuals came forward claiming to be the killer, but when questioned by the police, they couldn't provide any details that only the real killer would know. Instead, they simply repeated details they had read in the newspapers. The police department changed personnel a lot during the investigation. However, none were able to solve the case, allowing Candy's murder to remain one of the state's most notorious and baffling crimes. The crime had a profound impact on the local community, leading many parents to reevaluate their perception of safety and ultimately changing the way they supervised their children's outdoor activities. In the early 2000s, the case was reopened, and a new detective used modern technologies to help with the investigation. Fortunately, the police had collected and preserved crucial evidence in 1959, which allowed experts to take another look. By using modern DNA analysis, they were able to identify a male semen sample on the Candy's clothing. Further analysis of the DNA sample was done to create a profile, which was then entered into the FBI database, but yielded no matches. Investigators also compared the DNA to samples from multiple suspects, but none of them matched. For many years, people suspected Hugh Morse of committing the crime, but forensic evidence revealed no link between him and the murder. As a result, the investigation stalled once again. Although the police had a DNA sample from the perpetrator who sexually assaulted and killed Candy, identifying the individual continued to elude them. In 2021, authorities reopened the case, and a new detective chose to use genetic genealogy, a cutting-edge DNA analysis method, had already solved numerous cold cases. By applying this innovative approach, the detective hoped that the case will be solved. The detective reached out to several labs that specialized in the analysis he needed, but they all shared the same frustrating news. They concluded the sample had deteriorated too much, making it impossible to extract the necessary information. Undeterred, the detective contacted one final lab, and it has provided new clues that are helpful to the investigation. Armed with state-of-the-art tools, the experts were able to analyze the sample successfully and generate a DNA profile of the perpetrator. This profile was then uploaded to genealogical databases, allowing investigators to begin searching for the DNA owner's relatives. After carefully examining thousands of individuals, Then they narrowed down their focus to one specific family. Upon investigating this family, the investigators discovered that the DNA sample likely came from one of three brothers, but all three brothers had passed away. However, one of the brothers had a living daughter. The police reached out to her about the possibility that her father might have been involved in the murder. Despite her initial shock, she agreed to cooperate with the investigation. The woman provided a DNA sample, which was compared to the semen found on Candy's clothing. The results confirmed that she was closely related to culprit, who left the DNA evidence on Candy's clothing. Based on this new information, the police obtained a court order to exhume the woman's father's grave. DNA experts extracted a DNA profile from his remains and compared it to semen found on Candy's clothing. After a 62-year wait, the results revealed a definitive match between the DNA from the woman's father and the semen found on Candy's clothing. This confirmed that the perpetrator was a man named John Ryhoff. John Ryhoff was not initially identified as a suspect following Candy's murder. However, detectives later investigated his biography and found links to other crimes. At the time of the murder, John was 20 years old and lived within a mile of Candy's house. He was also stationed at an army base near where her body was discovered. 2 years after the murder, John committed another crime when he attacked a woman, binding and sexually assaulting her, then attempting to kill her. The woman managed to survive the attack. As a result of the assault, John was arrested and sentenced to 6 months in prison. He also received a dishonorable discharge from the army. Upon his release from prison, John started a family and has 4 children, 2 sons and 2 daughters. He kept a low profile and appeared to be living an ordinary life, working multiple jobs. One of these jobs was at a food packaging plant, where he suffered a severe chemical burn to his face and leaving a scar. John finally ended his life in June 1970, at the age of 31, leaving no note or explanation. The authorities determined that the victim, Candy, may have known her killer, John. Candy's friend, who was 10 years old at the time of the murder, was revealed to be the killer's sister. Years later, she recalled how she cried in her brother's, John's arms after learning about Candy's death. Unaware that he was the person responsible. Sadly, Candy's parents did not live to see their daughter's case solved. Candy's mother passed away in 2006, and her father died life in 1963, for years after Candy's murder, likely due to his inability to cope with his loss. After 62 years, the case was finally solved, marking one of the longest investigations in history. The investigation involved multiple detectives from different generations. At the press conference announcing the killer's identity, only one officer who worked on the case in 1959 was present. He expressed gratitude for having lived long enough to see the case resolved and to finally know the truth. The daughter of the killer, John Ryhoff, initially struggled to accept that her father committed such a heinous crime. However, she eventually came to terms with the fact, describing her father as a monster who took an innocent girl's life. She has expressed regret that her father was not held accountable for his actions during his lifetime. Hello again, true crime fans, we've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Peter Tobin. Peter Britton Tobin was born on August 27, 1946, in Johnstone, Scotland. He was the youngest of 8 children born to Marjorie and Daniel Tobin. From an early age, Peter displayed an impulsive personality, prompting his parents to send him to boarding school in 1953 when he was only 7 years old. However, this did not work, and he was sent to a reformatory. After completing his time there, he moved to Brighton, England. There, Peter began a relationship with Margaret Mount, a young typist who was attracted to his personality. They married in August 1969, but soon, Peter's ruthless, controlling, and abusive personality manifested itself. Not only that, Peter also became involved in criminal activities. A year later, he was convicted and imprisoned in England for theft and counterfeiting. Margaret decided to divorce him in 1973. Peter then married Sylvia Jeffrey, a 30-year-old local nurse, who was also attracted to his charm. That year, they had their first son, Ian, and a year later, a daughter, Claire, who unfortunately died shortly after birth. Sylvia was devastated by the loss of her child, became a victim of Peter's abuse, and decided to leave in 1976, taking their young son with her. Years later, when he was in his 40s, Peter was ready for a new romantic relationship. This time, he chose Kathy Wilson, a sensitive, naive, and impressionable 16-year-old girl. This made it easy for Peter to start a relationship with Kathy. The two moved in together, and soon after, their son, Daniel, was born. They married in 1989 and moved to Scotland. This was a difficult time for Kathy. Her husband was controlling, preventing her from going out and becoming increasingly violent. Eventually, Kathy bravely decided to run away with her son in the late 1990s. Kathy's departure brought out the worst in Peter. After Kathy left, Peter met a gentle girl named Vicky Hamilton. Vicky was born in Scotland in 1976 and was the second child of Michael and Janet Hamilton. She had 3 siblings, Sharon, Lee, and Lindsay. However, arguments arose between Peter and Vicky and they quickly divorced. Vicky, Lee, and Lindsay lived with their mother and moved to South London. Sharon still lives in Bath, but this did not prevent Vicky and Sharon from maintaining the same close relationship as before. The evening of February 10th was cold and snowy. On a hangout with Sharon, Vicky checked her fare and went over the bus route with Sharon. They hugged goodbye. At the bus stop, while eating a bag of chips, Vicky met Peter. He pulled Vicky into his car, raped her, and then killed her. When Vicky failed to visit her mother's house, and there was no news of her, her family began to search for her. They reported her disappearance to the police. As the police investigated the case, Vicky's image became prominent across Scotland, and the search for her became one of the largest in the country's history. The runaway theory was reinforced on February 21, 1991, when Vicky's purse was found near the main bus station in Edinburgh. It was, in fact, a false clue planted by Peter to throw investigators off track. The attempt was successful, sending the investigation off track. Detectives spent 2 months searching London unsuccessfully. It was then revealed that Vicky's mother had died. Over the next 10 years, Vicky's family and townspeople continued to pursue the case, but with more than 7,000 names on file, nearly 4,000 statements taken, some 500 documents and 380 potential physical evidence, all to no avail. The case was eventually dropped. The next young woman to have Peter's misfortune was Dinah McNichol, an Essex native with a brother and 3 sisters. Her father was a jazz musician and her mother had died in a car accident many years earlier. At 18, Dinah was a kind, cheerful girl and a great friend. She had just graduated from high school and had high hopes for the future. She was torn between taking a year off to travel or going to college, but she was undecided. On the first weekend of August 1991, Dinah attended a music festival in Hampshire. There, she met a boy named David Tremlett. They quickly fell in love. On Sunday, August 4th, they spent the night together in a tent. The next day, Dinah helped him take down the tent and they agreed to each hitchhike home. As they were both tired, Peter showed up and offered to give them a ride. David got out of the car first, and Dinah saved Peter's number before parting ways. Alone with the strange driver, the girl was about to face a real nightmare. On Monday, August 5, 1991, he did the same to her as he had done to Vicky. Dinah's scarf became a crime tool. After the crime, Peter withdrew money from Dinah's account at ATMs in Hampshire and Sussex. When Dinah's family saw the withdrawals from her account, they immediately suspected something was wrong. They knew she had carefully saved every penny and planned to use it for travel or education. As the days passed, the family lived in fear and uncertainty, which was the worst thing. Although no one said it, everyone believed that something terrible had happened. If Dinah were still alive, she would have returned home or called to explain her absence. As for Peter, he left Margate without saying goodbye or explaining anything. In 1993, he settled in Hampshire, renting a flat in Leek Park, saying he wanted to be closer to his son. On August 4, 1993, two 14-year-old girls went to visit Dinah but did not see her. So they asked the neighbors if anyone had seen Dinah, which led to them knocking on Peter's door. Peter invited the two girls into his house, ostensibly to wait for Dinah. They saw his friendly 5-year-old son and agreed without suspicion. While the child was asleep, Peter began to torment the two girls. He threatened them with a knife and forced them to drink alcohol, then beat and raped them. One of the girls was seriously injured. Fortunately, the child woke up in time and saved them from the same terrible fate as the two previous victims. Peter wanted to hide the truth from his son, so he decided to leave the apartment with the child. Before leaving at around 2 a.m., he turned on the gas stove to complete his monstrous plan. However, the two girls were lucky to wake up and escape. They went to the police and reported everything that had happened. After that, Peter returned the child to his mother and joined a sect called the Jesus Fellowship under a false name. But the media published his photo, provided by the police, and his face became widely known. With the help of BBC Crime Watch, Peter was finally arrested after 40 days on the run in Brighton. Peter appeared in court on May 18, 1994 and pleaded guilty to sexual assault and indecent assault on two young girls. As a result, he was sentenced to 14 years in prison. However, Peter was released in 2014 at the age of 58 without serving the full sentence. After his release, Peter returned to Scotland with the aim of hiding in the same area to avoid being identified as a sex offender. He evaded capture for a long time until 2006. During this time, Peter used a false name and posed as a homeless person. He sought refuge at St. Patrick's Cathedral in Glasgow. Under the name Peter McLaughlin, Peter approached a charity couple from the church group, Dennis and Katie Curran. Katie still felt uneasy about Peter despite his frail appearance. On the other hand, having been raised Catholic, Peter felt comfortable in the church. He begged there, which helped him gain sympathy from the parishioners. This gave Peter the freedom to move around unnoticed and provided him with an ideal hiding place. Here, Peter met Angelika Kluck, a 23-year-old girl from Poland. She came to Scotland in the summer of 2006 to work and pay for her language lessons. Angelika was living in the rectory of St. Patrick's Church and doing cleaning work. Peter took an immediate liking to Angelika and convinced her to help him with various tasks. On Sunday, September 24, 2006, Angelika helped Peter paint a shed. Some parishioners saw them together. But unexpectedly, Peter attacked Angelika at the back of the chapel. Leica Brown, 47, and her husband, Andrew, 46, were at home when they heard a woman screaming through an open window. Leica described the scream as a short, loud sound, like someone being forcibly restrained. The scream made her nervous and she got up from her chair, but when she got to the window, she couldn't see anything. Hours passed and the parishioners noticed that Angelika was no longer there. That was when Dennis and Katie quickly reported the unusual disappearance to the police. The police immediately began investigating and interviewed every member of the community. During these interviews, it was discovered that the last person anyone saw with Angelika was Peter, albeit under the guise of a homeless. He eventually became the prime suspect and the police came to question him, but found no evidence. The investigation continued. Peter knew that it was only a matter of time before they found the body and traced it back to him, so he fled to London. By this time, Detective David Swindle had joined the investigation and began to suspect that this might not just be a disappearance. Everything they found, as well as the testimonies they gathered, made him think that Angelica was unlikely to be found alive. Finally, on September 29, 2006, authorities discovered the body in the chapel. This news shocked British society, especially because of the location chosen by the perpetrator to hide the body. Looking at the injuries sustained by the girl, Detective David suspected that the perpetrator was not acting for the first time. However, there was more news to come. The DNA found at the crime scene and on the victim's body matched the data in the United Kingdom's National Criminal Intelligence Database. That's when they learned that the man they were looking for was Peter Tobin, whose fingerprints were also found at the crime scene. The first step for the authorities was to publish his photograph in the media. His image was also sent nationwide for distribution, and the Scottish police contacted the Metropolitan Police, initiating a search throughout the United Kingdom. Meanwhile, Peter, who was in London, tried to hide in a place where he believed he wouldn't be sought. He went to a hospital, pretending to have heart problems, claiming to have chest pain and weakness on the left side of his body. He identified himself as a plumber and called himself James Kelly. He was examined by Dr. Nick Lasso, who conducted several tests. However, something in his demeanor and behavior made the doctor uncomfortable. Initially, he avoided eye contact, which was unusual for a patient. Then, when the tests didn't reveal any physical reasons for the pain he claimed to be experiencing, the doctor became suspicious. His suspicions were confirmed by a nurse who recognized Peter from a photograph circulating in the media. As a result, both the nurse and the doctor contacted the police. This phone call changed the entire dynamic of the investigation. On September 30th, police officer Alan Murray was dispatched to the hospital in London. Peter was taken to a room and Alan went to talk to him. He was immediately arrested. Although initially, he was charged only with a violation of the sex offender registry, this thing allowed the officers to buy time to prepare a criminal case against him. Evidence gathered by the police team led by Detective David led to Peter's trial for the crimes committed against Angelica in late March 2007. Despite all the evidence against him, Peter denied committing any violent acts against the young woman. However, in an attempt to shift blame for the rape, he claimed that they engaged in consensual sexual activity. Peter also denied providing false information to the police and hospital staff. After 6 weeks of legal proceedings, his lies and manipulations proved futile as he was found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 21 years. Detective David and his team suspected that there were more mysteries to Peter's story. During the trial, the detectives further investigated Peter's life, gathered more evidence and built a profile with the cooperation of various law enforcement agencies. To avoid affecting the case involving Angelica, they chose to carry out their work discreetly and carefully. The joint police investigation was called Anagram. Investigators identified links between the disappearances and locations that Peter had visited. The investigation revealed 2 exact links, one in Bathgate and one in Margate. A search was then carried out at Peter's old house on the coast and they found a knife with traces of DNA hidden in the attic. However, no other findings were made at the location. Investigators then visited the house where he lived in Margate and established that he was a dangerous serial offender. A search of the house revealed a secret grave in the garden that he had created for his son. Investigators dug up a sand pit in the garden and found the body of a woman. Further searches at the same location uncovered another body. A woman's handbag was found at the crime scene and was collected for DNA analysis. As well as identifying the two victims, the handbag was also analyzed. Although the handbag clearly contained DNA, there was no match in the National DNA database. However, on June 1, 2007, investigators found a DNA match to Peter's fingerprints. This was a vital lead, and they decided to pursue this line of investigation. On November 14, 2007, the authorities confirmed that one of the bodies was that of Vicky Hamilton, who had gone missing at the age of 15. Her family had waited 16 years for any information about her. They later identified the second body as that of 18-year-old Dinah McNichol, who was hitchhiking home after attending a concert. On September 1, 2008, the Crown Prosecution Service charged Peter with Vicky's murder, leading to his trial. When Vicky's father, Michael, saw Peter, he was restrained by the police, as at that point he just wanted Peter to know that he was there to defend his daughter's honor and remember her. Peter faced sentencing after a month of trial on December 2, 2008, when he was convicted of Vicky's murder and sentenced to life in prison. A year later, in December 2009, Dinah's trial took place. On December 16, due to the defense's failure to provide evidence to exonerate his client, the jury found Peter guilty of Dinah's murder. As a result, he was given an additional life sentence. 5 months before his trial, a report on November 22, 2007, stated that Peter Tobin had been attacked by fellow inmates in prison, but he only suffered minor injuries. During the investigation, Peter Tobin also confessed to a total of 11 murders. Peter died in hospital on October 8, 2022. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Shad Therian. Shad Therian was born on September 7, 1997, in Green Bay, Wisconsin, to parents Tara Pinich and Michael Therian. His parents later separated, and his mother started dating a man named Steve. Shad Therian grew up in a loving family that included his parents, 2 sisters, Ava and Svea, a brother, Bo Smith, and his younger sibling, Therian. He was also surrounded by a large, close-knit family that included paternal and maternal grandparents, as well as many aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, and cousins. Additionally, Shad Therian had many friends who were like a second family to him. As a child, Shad attended Howard and SWO schools. However, he later decided to help out with the family business, working alongside his father and grandfather. Shad was a lively and adventurous person who enjoyed activities such as camping, gaming, and spending quality time with loved ones. Shad was a talented and artistic person who loved carving wood. He was also kind and compassionate, often putting others' interests before his own. His empathetic nature made him a loving family member. However, what happened to him is all the more tragic because of his good character. On the evening of February 23, 2022, Shad told his family that he was going out to meet 2 friends. They planned to hang out for the night, and his parents bid him goodbye around 9:30 p.m. At the time, no one knew the danger he was about to face. Shad's mother, Tara, had gone out for a while and returned a couple of hours later. She then went upstairs to sleep, unaware that her son had returned home with his friend Taylor and was in the basement. Several hours after midnight, Tara was awoken by the sound of the front door slamming shut as Taylor left. This startled her, and she came downstairs. Tara called out to her son, but when he didn't answer, she went down to the basement to look for him. As she entered the basement, she noticed a bucket with a rag covering it, and she removed the rag, revealing a horrific sight. Her son's severed head was inside the bucket. Panicked, she immediately called 911. "My son's head is in a bucket in my basement," she told the operator. When the operator asked her to confirm what she had seen, she replied, "I looked in a bucket and saw my son's head." When police officers arrived at her residence on Stony Brook Lane in Green Bay, Wisconsin, they secured the entire house before entering the basement. There, they were met with a gruesome scene that left them shocked. They knew they had to find the person responsible for the savage crime, as they posed a potential threat to society as a whole. During their investigation, detectives made a disturbing discovery in a bucket: Shad's severed genitalia and head. They then analyzed Shad's phone records and found that on the evening of February 23rd, he had agreed to meet his friends Taylor and Alexander. At around 9:30 p.m. Taylor picked up Shad to hang out at her apartment. According to Shad's mother, Tara, police questioned Taylor and Alexander at their homes. Taylor was living with her friend Scott Thomas at his house. At Taylor's residence, detectives found bloody footprints near her minivan leading up to her apartment. The investigators took Taylor to the station for additional questioning despite having already been charged with a horrific crime: beheading her ex-partner. A bizarre scene unfolded in the interrogation room as Taylor appeared unconcerned by the situation and instead focused on complaining about the room's cleanliness. As she sat, gazing at the camera, it became evident that she showed no signs of remorse or guilt over what she had done to Shad Therian. The detective got straight to the point and asked her how she knew Shad. Taylor replied that he was her ex-boyfriend. She also admitted that she had met with Shad on February 23rd in her apartment, where Scott was also present. Additionally, she confirmed that the minivan belonged to Scott. When questioned about the activities she, Shad, and Alexander did that night, Taylor readily confessed that they had smoked weed together. She explained that she was giving Shad a haircut while they smoked. However, after a while, Alexander decided to head home, citing the late hour. After Alexander left, Taylor and Shad decided to go to Shad's house, where he told her that his mother and her boyfriend would be coming home late. They went to Shad's house, where they used ice and also injected trazodone, a medication Taylor had stolen from her friend Scott. This revelation suggested that Taylor struggled with substance abuse, adding another layer of complexity to the case. During the interrogation, the detective realized that Taylor was under the influence of drugs, but continued questioning her anyway. Taylor told Detective Graff that Shad's body was still in the basement. When the detective asked for more details about what happened to Shad, Taylor claimed she couldn't remember, saying she had blacked out after smoking and drinking for a while. During the interrogation, Taylor initially attempted to deceive the detectives but soon realized her tactics were ineffective. She eventually confessed to being intimate with Shad on the night in question, revealing that their encounter involved various props, including a choke collar. As the questioning continued, Taylor acknowledged that she took pleasure in strangling Shad, and that he also enjoyed it. This behavior exposed her sadistic and violent tendencies. When asked about her preferences, Taylor clarified that she enjoyed being the one doing the strangling, rather than being on the receiving end. She also admitted to having a history of engaging in this behavior. When questioned about the whereabouts of the remaining body parts, Taylor expressed regret for not bringing Shad's head with her. However, this regret was not driven by remorse for her actions, but rather frustration with her own mistake, which ultimately led the police to her. The detective was surprised by her straightforward answers, which detailed the dismemberment of Shad's body. Taylor explained that some body parts were in the van, while others were in the basement. What was more astonishing was her lack of remorse after committing such a heinous crime. The conversation then shifted to the whereabouts of the body parts and organs. Taylor explained that they were all in a black bag. The detective wondered if they would need to take the head to a separate location, to which Taylor replied that it would be difficult to dispose of all the organs. The detective suspected Taylor's behavior was indicative of a disturbed psyche or mental health condition, hindering her emotional response to the crime. Alternatively, she might have been under the influence of drugs, triggering her to act on intrusive thoughts. During the interrogation, Taylor giggled and laughed while providing details of the crime, displaying a disturbing nonchalance. She casually admitted to dismembering her ex-lover with kitchen knives and not disposing of the body parts due to laziness. Her lack of emotion and calm demeanor raised doubts about her mental health and whether she had planned the harm. Taylor denied any intention, but her response lacked remorse. Taylor described how she strangled Shad with chains, admitting that she enjoyed the process and didn't stop even when Shad struggled. This behavior showcases her cruel and sadistic nature. During the interrogation, Taylor shocked the detectives by revealing that Taylor continued to engage in sex with Shad's body after discovering he had passed away. Taylor made a disturbing statement, claiming that when she loved something or someone too much, Taylor felt an overwhelming urge to kill it and lost control. This suggests that Taylor was fully aware of her actions when she dismembered Shad, as the incident occurred immediately after they had been intimate. Taylor openly discussed her disturbing actions after killing Shad, revealing a shocking disregard for human life. Taylor admitted to playing with his body for 2 to 3 hours after his death, demonstrating necrophiliac tendencies. Taylor also expressed regret over not taking any drugs after the incident, knowing it would have calmed her down. During the dismemberment and cleanup process, she became frustrated, but later claimed to have enjoyed it. Taylor explained that she was in a state of panic after the incident and didn't know how to react. She considered calling the police or an ambulance but didn't. When questioned by Detective David about her decision, Taylor expressed regret over her actions. She acknowledged that she had thought about seeking help but was overwhelmed by her emotions. In a later interrogation, Taylor provided a detailed and graphic account of how she dismembered the victim's body. Taylor pulled him over, his head hanging off the bed, near the tub. After I cut his head off, Taylor moved the tub underneath. Taylor explains the sequence: I beheaded the body, blood spilled into a pail, and the head fell in. I poured the contents into a blue Tupperware, finished cutting the head, and placed it in a container. The internal organs are in the Tupperware were scattered around, some in separate plastic bags. I put the bagged organs in a backpack, leaving the blood in the blue tub. Taylor Schabusiness was born in Avon, Illinois in November 1997 to Maria and Arturo Coronado. When she was in 4th grade, her family relocated to Wisconsin. Later, she married Warren Schabusiness and had a son, Matto, with him. Despite this, she reconnected with an ex-boyfriend, Shad Therian, and engaged in a relationship with him. After the heinous crime was committed, the authorities recognized that Taylor had significant mental health issues that required attention. However, they also determined that at the time of the crime, she was fully aware of her actions, which included the admission of enjoying the process of dismembering Shad's body. Taylor also confessed to using sex toys on his deceased body and engaging in other forms of physical intimacy with him. Taylor Schabusiness was arrested on February 23, 2022, for the murder and dismemberment of her ex-partner, Shad Therian. Her trial began on July 24, 2022. Due to the severity of the crime, the court needed to determine whether Taylor was sane at the time of the crime and if she understood that her actions were wrong. During the trial, Taylor's grandmother testified about Taylor's difficult childhood. She explained that Taylor's mother had passed away at a young age and her father had remarried. Taylor had also experienced the loss of her brother, Arturo Coronado Jr., in a motorcycle accident in 2021. Additionally, Taylor's husband, Warren Schabusiness, was already incarcerated for distributing methamphetamine and was also serving as Taylor's defender in court. The grandmother further revealed that Taylor's young son had been taken into custody by Child Protective Services just 24 hours after his birth. However, Taylor's grandmother and her husband were fighting to regain custody of their grandson, Matto. The grandmother attributed Taylor's turbulent upbringing to her struggles with depression and bipolar disorder. She emphasized that Taylor needed psychological help, but also deserved a second chance at life. Arturo Coronado, Taylor's 51-year-old father, was brought to the courtroom from prison, where he was serving time for assaulting a child. What was unsettling was Taylor's reaction to his presence. she couldn't stop smiling and giggling throughout his testimony. Despite her unusual behavior, her father provided a candid account of her upbringing. He acknowledged that Taylor had struggled in high school, which led him to send her to live with her grandparents in Texas, where she eventually graduated. He also revealed that Taylor had been admitted to a psychiatric center before the birth of her child, Maddo, due to hallucinations and suicidal thoughts. According to her, Arturo Coronado, Taylor's life took a turn for the worse when she met her husband, who introduced her to drugs. When Alexander Gainan, a mutual friend of Taylor and Shad, took the stand to testify, Taylor continued to giggle and laugh throughout his statement. Alexander explained that he had known Taylor and Shad since their time at Bellevue Middle School, confirming that they had dated at the time. He also shared his account of the night of the murder, stating that he had been drinking with Taylor and others at her apartment, but left around 1 or 2 a.m. when it got late. Alexander added that he had attempted to contact Shad the following day, but received no response. At her next court appearance, Taylor was seen wearing a spit mask, typically used to prevent individuals from spitting on law enforcement or court staff. Valerie, Taylor's second cousin, and several distant relatives testified on her behalf, stating that while Taylor currently required psychological treatment, she deserved a second chance at life in the future. Kelly Therian criticized Taylor, saying her actions were cowardly and that her mental health issues shouldn't be a reason for parole. Assistant District Attorney Caleb Saunders concluded that Taylor's actions were not a result of her substance abuse or mental health issues, but rather a deliberate choice. He emphasized that her lack of remorse warrants the harsher sentence for such a heinous crime. Defense attorney Christopher Frolick argued Taylor deserves a second chance, despite committing a horrific crime. He called the murder an honest mistake, suggesting Taylor didn't intentionally commit the crime or take pleasure in it. Frolick claimed Taylor was intoxicated and not fully aware of her actions when speaking with detectives. When Taylor requested a possible extension of the trial, her outburst in court revealed that Taylor was not only struggling with substance abuse, but also had deeper issues that required immediate attention. The trial concluded on September 26, 2022, with Judge Thomas Walsh sentencing Taylor to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The case shocked the world due to the inhumane nature of the crime, in which Taylor dismembered her former lover, Shad Therian. What was even more disturbing was Taylor's apparent lack of remorse or guilt for the heinous crime she had committed. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Maria Munoz. Maria Munoz was born on January 25, 1989, in Puerto Rico, to Marisol Rodriguez and Jorge Luis Munoz. She was one of 3 children, and her early life was marked by a significant loss when her mother passed away. It was during this time that Maria met Joel Pellet, who was 11 years her senior. Despite their age difference, they got married in 2011. Joel Pellet, a nursing student at the time, had big dreams, and Maria was also a nurse. After their wedding, they moved to Laredo, Texas, where Joel Pellet secured a high-paying job as a nurse anesthetist at a local hospital. Maria Munoz, 31, was a devoted stay-at-home mom in Laredo, Texas, dedicating her time to caring for her 2 young sons and her husband, Joel Pellet, 40. She had left her job to focus on raising her children, and her days were filled with activities like taking them to the park and reading to them before bed. Although she was happy at home with her children, she had always dreamed of returning to school to become a nurse again. On the surface, Joel Pellet's family looked perfect. Joel Pellet often shared family photos with friends and colleagues, proudly talking about his wonderful wife and children. However, beneath the surface, a different reality was taking place. In 2018, after the birth of their second son, people close to Joel Pellet noticed a significant change in his behavior. He lost weight, gained muscle, and became more outgoing, especially with women. His behavior was flirtatious and not what was expected of a married man. He also started removing photos of his wife and children from social media, replacing them with pictures of himself alone. This change gave the impression that he was single. Around the same time, colleagues observed Joel Pellet growing closer to a surgical nurse named Janet Arando. It became clear that they were having an affair behind Maria's back. In early 2020, Maria discovered evidence of their relationship when she found airline tickets Joel Pellet had purchased for himself and Janet to travel to Europe. This revelation devastated Maria, leaving her feeling heartbroken, depressed, and betrayed. She had trusted her husband and thought their marriage was strong, but the discovery shattered her trust. Maria's world was turned upside down when she discovered that her 10-year marriage was a sham. Overwhelmed with emotions, she felt lost and alone, struggling to come to terms with the devastating truth. Seeking guidance, she began therapy sessions to cope with her mental health struggles, and her therapist prescribed medication to support her through this difficult time. As a way to process her emotions, Maria started keeping a journal to express her thoughts and feelings. As the situation between Maria and Joel Pellet continued to deteriorate, tensions escalated. On September 19, 2020, Maria visited Janet's house, where she found Joel Pellet's car parked in the driveway. Confronting him, Maria gave him an ultimatum: choose between her and Janet. Joel Pellet's response was clear: he chose Janet. The argument became heated, prompting Janet to call the police. However, by the time they arrived, Maria and Joel Pellet had already left the scene. Maria was driving with Joel Pellet when the police called her. She could hear him yelling in the background. When they arrived home, he became extremely angry and punched a hole in Maria's car windshield, demonstrating a disturbing level of aggression. The next morning, Maria sent Joel Pellet a text message stating her intention to hire a lawyer to help resolve their issues. Joel Pellet responded, suggesting they handle the situation on their own to avoid the costs associated with hiring lawyers. However, just a few hours later, Joel Pellet appeared to have a change of heart. He sent Maria an email expressing his deep sadness and emotional pain. In the email, Joel Pellet conveyed his desire to have an honest and calm conversation with Maria. Maria replied to the email, and they agreed to meet the following evening at around 5 p.m. On Monday, September 21st, before going to meet him, Maria was so nervous and then messaged her friend Yasmin Martinez that today they were going to meet. The next day, a terrifying turn of events unfolded. At around 1:40 a.m. on September 22, 2020, a distressed call was made to 911. Joel Pellet claimed that his wife may have ingested some prescription medication and was not breathing. DEA Officer Cruz was first on the scene and his body camera captured everything that happened next. He found Joel Pellet at the top of the stairs near the master bedroom, Joel Pellet dressed in hospital gown and performing CPR on Maria, while their son slept in a nearby room. When the paramedics arrived, they took charge of performing CPR on Maria. Meanwhile, another police officer approaches Joel Pellet to ask about the pills Maria took. Joel Pellet quickly retrieved a pill bottle from the nearby bathroom, handing it over to the officers. An examination of the bottle revealed that it contained clonazepam, a prescription medication used to treat anxiety, panic attacks, and sometimes epilepsy, prescribed in Joel Pellet's name, not Maria's. The officer noticed two suspicious details. First, the pill bottle had been returned to the medicine cabinet, which is unusual in overdose cases where the bottle typically remains near the victim. Secondly, body camera footage showed Joel Pellet picking up the pill container from the floor and putting it in his pocket before claiming to have found it in the bathroom. DEA Officer Cruz wondered why he would need to retrieve the pills, which made him suspect that Joel Pellet might be hiding something. Another suspicious discovery was a needle catheter on the stairs of their home. This seemed odd to him. Joel Pellet and Maria had 2 young children, so finding a needle on the stairs raised questions about why it was there. Investigations revealed more than just a needle at the scene. A medical bag was found containing syringes and equipment, all neatly packed. While this might seem ordinary for an anesthesia nurse like Maria, the presence of these medical tools outside a hospital setting sparked questions for investigators. Joel Pellet told officers that Maria had been struggling with severe depression, which had gotten worse recently. Despite the efforts of the medical team, Maria could not be saved. Tragically, she was pronounced dead at 3:58 a.m. After Maria was declared dead, the officers took Joel Pellet downstairs to the kitchen for further questioning. Joel Pellet explained that he and Maria had met earlier that day to talk, during which they became intimate. Afterward, he took a shower, and when he came out, he found Maria sleeping. When he returned upstairs, he found Maria unresponsive and not breathing. As Joel Pellet spoke with the officer, his behavior seemed unusual. He was sweating heavily and struggled to answer basic questions about what happened. The officer noted that Joel Pellet's level of sweating was noticeably higher than anyone else present, including the first responder who had been trying to save Maria's life for the past 2 hours. This raised the officer's suspicion, leading them to take Joel Pellet to the police station with Sergeant Lisa Mata for more questioning. Joel Pellet was left alone in the interrogation room at the police station for a period of time before an officer arrived. Unbeknownst to him, his every move was being recorded on video. When officers reviewed the footage, they were shocked to see Joel Pellet's sudden and extreme behavior. He began screaming, crying, and hitting the walls, and even threw furniture around the room. His outburst was so loud that it frightened people in the hallway and nearby rooms. At 4 a.m., Sergeant Lewis Matt entered the room to speak with Joel Pellet. During their conversation, Joel Pellet opened up about the events leading up to Maria's death. He also made a shocking confession: he had been involved with another woman, Janet, and had been living with her for 5 months prior to Maria's death. Joel Pellet revealed that he had been in a relationship with Janet for 2 years, and Maria had been aware of the affair. According to Joel Pellet, on the night of Maria's death, he visited the home to discuss their marriage with Maria. After their conversation, they became intimate. Joel Pellet claimed that he thought Maria was asleep in her room, but when he checked on her 10 minutes later, he found her unresponsive. Joel Pellet also confessed to giving Maria the medication clonazepam, which had been prescribed to him to help with anxiety and depression. However, he was unable to provide details about the dosage or how many pills were left in the bottle before Maria took them. Despite further questioning, Joel Pellet was unable to provide any additional information to clarify the situation. After the interrogation, he was released. The next step in the investigation was to perform Maria's autopsy, which took place just 8 hours after her death. This quick turnaround meant that any substance that had caused her death should still be present in her stomach contents. However, when the autopsy results came in, they revealed a surprising twist: no pills were found in her stomach. Instead, the medical examiner's report revealed a small, red pinprick mark on the inside of her elbow. This mark was concerning because it suggested that Maria may have been injected with something. The discovery of this mark led investigators to explore its significance and potential connection to her death. As they dug deeper, they discovered a journal at Maria's house. Maria had started keeping a journal to cope with her anxiety and depression. The journal proved to be a crucial piece of evidence, helping investigators identify the culprit behind her death. Maria's journal revealed her heartbreaking experiences and thoughts. Despite knowing her husband Joel Pellet wanted to be with someone else, Maria wanted to preserve their family and expressed her love for him. In her journal entries, she poured out her emotions, detailing the pain of Joel Pellet leaving their home in Laredo and leaving her to care for their 2 young sons alone. Her diary and cell phone recordings also helped investigators uncover Joel Pellet's abusive behavior. Maria's journal entries exposed her emotional journey, from grief and heartbreak to healing and newfound hope for the future. She wrote about feeling trapped in a constant internal battle. She begged for her emotional turmoil to end, describing how her past haunted her, her present was confusing, and her future was uncertain. In a poignant cry for help, Maria turned to a higher power, pleading for an end to her suffering. She asked for laughter, peace, and happiness to return to her life, and for her heart and mind to be free from pain and torture. Maria Menoz's journal entries from the day before her death revealed her desire to move forward with her life. There was no indication of suicidal thoughts or plans to end her life. As a result, investigators initially ruled out the possibility of suicide. To gain a deeper understanding of the circumstances surrounding her death, they sought additional information. Dr. John Hunsinger, anesthesiologist, reviewed the autopsy findings and contacted the lead detective, DEA Cruz, to express his concerns. Dr. John Hunsinger recommended a comprehensive toxicology screening, which the investigators subsequently conducted. In January 2021, Sergeant Louis Matt and DEA Cruz received toxicology test results that contradicted Joel Pellet's claim that Maria had been given clonazepam. The report actually showed that Maria's body did not have that drug. However, it revealed something more astonishing: the presence of 7 other powerful drugs. These medications, typically used in surgical procedures, included morphine, Demerol, Versed, propofol, and ketamine, as well as lidocaine and Naren. Specifically, propofol and ketamine are commonly used as sedatives and painkillers during surgeries. Administered through and for. The unusual presence of these drugs was significant, as they are tightly controlled and rarely accessed outside of anesthesiology departments, making it difficult for even many medical professionals to obtain them. The discovery of propofol in Maria's system was the most startling revelation for the investigators. Investigators believe that Joel Pellet, as a nurse anesthetist, had access to propofol due to his profession. Dr. Hunsinger, who worked with Joel Pellet and had experience with propofol, was shocked by the amount found in Maria's system, saying it was the highest amount he had ever seen. This led doctors to believe that propofol was the direct cause of Maria's death. They reasoned that, given his profession, Joel Pellet would have known the proper dosage to either anesthetize someone or cause an overdose. Additionally, a small mark on Maria's arm suggested that she may have been injected with some substance. Considering the autopsy report, Joel Pellet's suspicious behavior, and Maria's journal entries, the investigators believed they had enough evidence to arrest Joel Pellet for the murder of his wife. An arrest warrant was promptly issued, and authorities took Joel Pellet into custody without incident, as if he had anticipated and accepted his fate. Joel Pellet was then taken to the police station, marking a new phase in the investigation. The trial started on March 21, 2023. As the legal proceedings unfolded, both the prosecution and defense presented their cases. A prosecution team composed entirely of women known as Maria's team utilized Maria Menoz's journal entries to construct a compelling case against Joel Pellet. By sharing Maria's diary entries, prosecutors wanted to show the jury that Maria was a wonderful, caring, and intelligent mother whose vibrant spirit shone through the pages of her diary. The prosecutors alleged that Joel Pellet first drugged Maria by lacing her drink with a substance to make her sleepy. Once she was unconscious, they believed he injected her with propofol. Additionally, they suspected that Joel Pellet deliberately delayed calling 911, waiting long enough to ensure that first responders would be unable to revive her when they arrived. The prosecution team stated that Maria's journals helped them understand the challenges she faced, which fueled their determination to seek justice in her case. Roberto Bali, Joel Pellet's lawyer, informed the jury that his client had been trying to work on his marriage with Maria Menoz before her death. Roberto Bali noted that the medical examiner's report still did not clearly state the cause of Maria's death, and there was not enough evidence to prove Joel Pellet was responsible for her death. Roberto Bali pointed out that Joel Pellet had given Maria a medication called Naren, used to counteract overdoses, on the night she died. He also acknowledged that both Joel Pellet and Maria had struggled with drug addiction in the past. However, Roberto Bali argued that Maria had willingly taken the drugs without being forced, as there were no signs of trauma or coercion on her body. Despite this, investigators found that Maria did not have a history of drug addiction and that Joel Pellet was the only one who could have provided her with the large quantity of Propal. Maria was murdered, and Joel Pellet was put on trial for the crime. During the trial, it was revealed that Joel Pellet had given Maria a substance to calm her down, and he had brought home drugs, including Propal, from work. The jury quickly reached a verdict, finding Joel Pellet guilty of murder after just 1 hour of deliberation. The trial lasted for 9 days, concluding on March 30, 2023, with the guilty verdict. Joel Pellet was later sentenced to life in prison for the murder, plus an additional 10 years for tampering with evidence and a $10,000 fine. This sentence was handed down on April 27, 2023. The motive behind Joel Pellet's killing of his wife Maria Munoz is not entirely clear, but the prosecution believes it was driven by his desire to end his marriage and start a new relationship with his girlfriend Janet Arridan. As a result, Joel Pellet was held accountable for his actions. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Sierra Lamar. In March 2012, the Lamar family, consisting of Steve, a computer expert, his wife Marlene, and their 2 daughters, Danielle and Sierra, living in Fremont, California. Sierra was younger sister. She was born on October 19, 1996. Both girls had a relatively comfortable upbringing, with the usual ups and downs that come with family life. However, a disturbing fact about their father's past had a profound impact on the family. When Danielle and Sierra were younger, their father, Steve, was involved in a serious incident involving inappropriate behavior with one of their roommates during a sleepover. As a result, Steve was sentenced to 1 year in prison. Despite Steve's past convictions, both Sierra and Danielle reported having a good relationship with him, describing him as a kind and respected father. However, when Marlene learned about the incident, they decided to end their relationship, which was already struggling. Marlene soon moved on and started a new relationship. Despite this, both Sierra and Danielle attended Washington High School in their community, where they enjoyed socializing and performed reasonably well academically. Sierra was a cheerful and lively girl who was well-liked at school. She enjoyed participating in dance competitions and cheerleading. In October 2011, her mother, Marlene, decided to move from Fremont to Morgan Hill, a town located 40 miles southwest. Sierra, her mother, and her mother's boyfriend, Rick Gardner, settled into a rented ranch-style home on a rural cul-de-sac. However, Sierra was initially unhappy about leaving behind her close friends and hobbies in Fremont. She struggled to adjust to her new school, Sobrato High, where she didn't receive the same warm welcome she had at Washington High. Despite this, Sierra eventually settled in and made new friends, earning the respect and even joining the cheerleading squad again. By March 2012, Sierra had adapted well to her new environment. On March 11th, she had a conversation with her father and her sister, who still lived in Fremont, and updated them on her progress. The conversation was mostly positive, with Sierra expressing excitement about an upcoming school project, wanting to get her hair colored, and discussing her homework with her sister. Her academic performance seemed to be going well. Sierra ended her Thursday evening chat with Danielle and Steve after dinner, as she had school the next day and it was getting late. They agreed to part ways and promised to catch up soon, unaware that this would be their last conversation. The next morning, February 16, 2012, Sierra got ready for school, locking the house behind her. At 6:29 a.m., she tweeted a friend, then put on her shoes and left to catch the bus. The bus stop was located on a desolate road between Palm and Dewey Avenues, far from Sierra's school, Sobrato High. Many students, including Sierra, had to cross this road daily to catch the bus. At 7:11 a.m., Sierra texted a friend to meet up before class. However, when the bus arrived at 7:11 and 15 seconds a.m., Sierra was missing. Sierra didn't show up to school, which her friends found unusual. However, they didn't think it was serious enough to report to the school authorities. The day went on as usual. When the school day ended, Marlene, Sierra's mom, tried to contact Sierra, but her call went straight to voicemail. Although Marlene thought this was strange, she didn't get worried. However, when she got home and saw that Sierra's room was still empty, she realized that something was amiss. She contacted Steve to ask if Sierra was planning to visit him in Fremont again. Unfortunately, the answer was no. When Marlene called Danielle and a few other friends, they all left with the same message that Sierra could not be found. Marlene began to panic when she called Sierra's high school and discovered that she had missed all her classes. After her calling the authorities, officers were immediately sent to the pedo-Hispanic court. They began by speaking with those closest to Sierra, including several of her friends, who were all candid about the difficulties Sierra and her family were facing. Although Sierra was generally content, it had only been a few months since her mother's divorce forced her to leave her family and old friends behind. Authorities initially thought that Sierra might have left voluntarily, as she had previously mentioned returning to Fremont in a light-hearted and sometimes serious manner. However, there were several things that contradicted this theory. Sierra had stopped posting on social media, her phone was turned off, and all calls went straight to voicemail. She also never arrived at the front door of her home. Her loved ones launched a massive search despite police downplaying her disappearance. The investigation into Sierra's disappearance led to a complex trail of evidence. 2 days after she vanished, data forensics began examining her phone's previous activity. They discovered that her phone had briefly turned on in the middle of the night, before turning off again. The phone's coordinates pointed to a field near Sierra's house, which became a crucial lead in the investigation. A search crew thoroughly searched the fields where Sierra's phone had last been detected. Within minutes, they found the Samsung Galaxy phone she had been using. It was near the road, damaged, and had likely been thrown from a vehicle. Investigators concluded that Sierra hadn't turned on her phone that evening. Instead, they believed that rain had caused a false signal, briefly activating her phone. This coincidence was crucial, as the entire investigation hinged on the discovery of her phone. The case took a disturbing turn when detectives realized that Sierra's phone was probably thrown from a moving vehicle. There were no footprints, tire tracks, or other visible evidence. The next day, a search crew made another discovery. Sierra's backpack was found 2 kilometers from her house, discarded outside a barn. The bag contained her schoolwork, inhaler, and money, suggesting that she had been on her way to school and was forcibly separated from her essential items. Additionally, a complete outfit, believed to be the one Sierra was wearing the morning she vanished, was found in her luggage. This outfit included her pullover, pants, socks, shoes, and even undergarments. The outfit was subjected to DNA testing, which yielded results. Specifically, her pants contained male foreign DNA, suggesting that she had likely been assaulted. The discovery of Sierra's phone and clothing led to a surge of local and international sympathy. The search effort, which had already intensified significantly in the days following her disappearance, received a fresh wave of support. Authorities received over 1,000 new tips, and officers worked more than 7,000 hours. Multiple search teams, comprising over 800 individuals, were deployed to thoroughly search the area. They systematically examined every available lake and reservoir, combed over fields, and searched abandoned buildings. Sierra's disappearance was a major topic of discussion in the community, with missing person posters put up everywhere. Her parents offered a $10,000 reward for any credible information leading to her safe return. Despite the efforts of the community and investigators, only a golf ball and a flipper were found. However, unbeknownst to the public, investigators were making progress in identifying a potential suspect. 12 days after Sierra's disappearance, on March 28, DNA analysis revealed that the DNA on her pants belonged to a local man. As part of the investigation, DNA samples from all 57 registered sex offenders in the Morgan Hill zip code were compared to the DNA evidence. Sierra's father, who had a criminal record, proactively contacted law enforcement and was quickly eliminated as a suspect. One of the local men who had not been ruled out as a suspect was Antolin Garcia Torres. Following a DNA match between the 21-year-old man and Sierra's pants, he came to public attention. At the time, he lived in Maple Leaf Recreational Vehicle Park with his mother, pregnant wife, and daughter, about 7 miles from Sierra's house. Antolin Garcia Torres had a troubling past, had a challenging upbringing marked by abuse and neglect. His father, who was abusive and often drunk, had threatened to kill him and his mother before being imprisoned for molesting a young family member. The father's abusive behavior appears to have been passed on to his son. Although 2009 allegations of having sex with a minor were dismissed, Antolin Garcia Torres's DNA was collected. He was also detained in 2010 for impeding police operations. Due to the suspicious relationship between he and Sierra, detectives put him under constant surveillance. As it was unclear whether Sierra was still alive, Antolin Garcia Torres was the most likely person to have information. To monitor his activities, police tapped his phone, placed a GPS tracker in his car, and had 2 undercover investigators move into a vehicle park next to his house. After discovering that the vehicle park had cameras at the front door, investigators began reviewing security footage from the neighborhood around Antolin Garcia Torres's residence. They examined the film taken on the day of Sierra's disappearance to determine whether Antolin had left or arrived home. It was discovered that Antolin had left the campground in his red Volkswagen Jetta at 7 a.m. on the morning she vanished. Given that his home was only 7 miles from Sierra, Antolin's travel time matched the period during which Sierra could have been kidnapped. Although Antolin had left for work at the usual time, Safeway's shift records showed that he did not arrive at work on Sierra went missing. It was found that 3 years prior, there were 3 unsuccessful kidnapping attempts in the Safeway parking lot. But none of the perpetrators were identified or detained. The only evidence from these attempts was a taser dropped by the perpetrator, which had a fingerprint on one of its batteries. However, it was only a partial fingerprint, requiring a direct one-to-one comparison to match. The idea seemed promising, but when Antolin's fingerprints were compared to those on the taser, a surprising revelation emerged. In reality, their suspect was indeed Antolin. Antolin was taken into custody by investigators after being positively identified as someone who was present when Sierra went missing. His DNA was found on her pants, and he had a history of involvement in kidnappings. This evidence was enough to detain him for questioning and to seize his vehicle for further DNA testing. During the interview, the suspect, Antolin, showed arrogance and was dismissive of the questions. He claimed that on the day Sierra vanished, he had gone fishing and didn't know who she was. He was confident that the investigators wouldn't find any evidence against him. However, before the interview ended, Antolin made a strange revelation. He admitted to having a habit of strangling a snake while driving and then throwing the tissue out the window. He also claimed to have thrown out a used tissue in the exact spot where Sierra's bag was found on the morning she went missing. We already had a 1 in a million chance with the rain on Sierra's phone, and the police didn't believe Antolin's implausible explanation either. On May 21, 2012, Antolin Garcia Torres was formally detained in connection with Sierra Lamar's disappearance outside his workplace in a Safeway parking lot. This was the result of several distinct links between Sierra and Antolin's vehicle. A DNA test found her DNA on the interior door handle of the car's rear door. Additionally, fibers from the car seats matched those found on Sierra's clothing, and a piece of rope inside the car contained a strand of her hair. This proved beyond a doubt that she had been in his car at some point. However, even after his arrest, there was a significant issue. Despite the apparent evidence, Sierra's body had yet to be found. Could they accuse Antolin of first-degree murder without a body or verified death? In reality, Santa Clara County District Attorney Jeff Rosen announced on May 19, 2014, that he would seek the death penalty against Antolin. Although Antolin had previously pleaded not guilty to killing Sierra, the overwhelming evidence pointed to his guilt. Antolin's trial began on January 30, 2017, after being delayed. The trial was prolonged and stressful for all parties involved, with the prosecution and defense presenting lengthy arguments over 13 weeks of testimony. Antolin's defense team argued that his exposure to pesticides from surrounding fields during his childhood may have impaired his cognitive abilities. They claimed that this exposure was not his fault and, as a result, he should not be eligible for the death penalty. The defense argued that Antolin faced a unique disadvantage due to circumstances beyond his control. In a final attempt, Antolin's defense team requested a new trial, questioning the chief investigator's reliability and honesty, and alleging that he had tampered with evidence in the past. However, this attempt was denied. The jury convicted Antolin Garcia Torres of Sierra Lamar's first-degree murder on May 9, 2017. The evidence was so overwhelming against Antolin that he was unable to escape responsibility for his acts, even though Sierra's body has never been located. Outside of the evidence offered, Antolin was formally given a life sentence without the chance of parole after being spared the death penalty. Since his sentencing, Antolin has stayed largely silent, and despite receiving hundreds of letters from news organizations and total strangers, only one letter has been answered. Antolin wrote, "I hold fast to my innocence, and I'm not going to talk about the matter." It's puzzling why Antolin continues to claim innocence despite the overwhelming evidence against him. The presence of his DNA on Sierra's belongings, her DNA in his car, his past crimes, and a detailed timeline all clearly indicate his involvement in Sierra's disappearance. The search for Sierra Lamar is believed by some organizers to be the longest continuous search for a missing person in U.S. history. It spanned 3 years, with over 1,100 searches conducted within a 15-mile radius, totaling 50,000 man-hours of effort. Volunteers braved extreme weather conditions, from scorching summers to cold winters, in their quest for any information about Sierra. Despite the passing of time, many volunteers continue to search for her, driven by the desire to bring closure to her family, even though they acknowledge the likelihood of her being deceased. Currently, the whereabouts of Sierra's body remain unknown, but the hope is that one day, the Lamar family will find the closure they seek. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Lynette White. Lynette White was a beautiful young woman from Cardiff, Wales. Due to difficult circumstances, she had to support herself through prostitution since she was 14 years old. Although this was not Lynette's childhood dream, it was the path she was forced to choose. Before her murder, Lynette had given an interview to BBC Wales journalist Tim Rogers, who was investigating child prostitution. In this conversation, Lynette shared how she had been abused, taken to Bristol, and forced into prostitution. Although Lynette managed to return to Cardiff, she was still unable to escape this dangerous life. By 1988, when Lynette was 20 years old, she had become a well-known prostitute on the streets of Cardiff. With her beautiful appearance and high regard among her friends, Lynette was one of the top prostitutes in the city. She went to work every day, earning around 100 pounds a night. People often thought that Lynette White was trying her best to make a better life, but the reality was quite different. She worked hard just to pay for her boyfriend Stephen Miller's cocaine addiction. Every day, Stephen took large amounts of money from Lynette, who was his only source of income. Lynette and Stephen lived together in a flat on Dorset Street, Cardiff. Every day, Stephen drove Lynette to work in Riverside, Cardiff, and then went to the North Star Club in the evening to collect her earnings. Lynette's life took a new turn when Leanne, a friend of Lynette's, lent her the keys to a flat. The purpose of this was for Lynette to take clients there for sex. On the evening of February 14, 1988, Leanne went to the flat as she presumably wanted to use it. However, when she got there, Leanne found the door locked, which was quite unusual. Leanne became very concerned about Lynette and went to Buttetown Police Station to report her missing. The police went with Leanne to her James Street flat. They entered the flat and found Lynette lying in a pool of her own blood. She had died from severe injuries. A post-mortem examination by forensic pathologist Bernard Knight revealed that Lynette had been stabbed more than 50 times in various parts of her body, including her chest, face, abdomen, wrists, arms, hands, and thighs. In particular, her throat had been brutally slashed from ear to ear. Although Lynette had been stabbed multiple times, her cause of death was the injury to her throat. The medical examiner determined that Lynette was murdered on February 14. Between 1:45 a.m. and 4 a.m. Lynette's body was found between the foot of her bed and the window, covered in blood. An autopsy revealed that semen containing no sperm was found in Lynette's vagina and on her underwear. Additionally, 2 different blood types were found on Lynette, including her own blood and blood type AB, which was not Lynette's. After news of Lynette's death spread, police began to investigate the case further. Several witnesses reported seeing a distressed man in the area near where Lynette's body was found on James Street. The man looked suspicious and appeared to have blood on his hands. The suspicious man was described as a white man, about 5 feet 10 inches tall and in his mid-30s. Police focused their search on him and eventually arrested a man matching the description. However, he was released after providing an alibi. Police also investigated Stephen, Lynette's boyfriend, as the victim's partner is often the first suspect. Stephen was questioned but was later released because his blood type did not match the blood type found on Lynette. In addition, the police also investigated Francine Cordell and his mother because Lynette was scheduled to testify against Francine in court in an unrelated case. However, both were also ruled out as suspects because their blood did not match the AB blood type found on Lynette. With no leads, the police had to rely on statements collected from the house-to-house investigation. In particular, 2 people gave suspicious statements. They were Mark Gromick, who lived in the apartment above where Lynette was murdered, and his friend, Paul Atkins. In their testimonies, Mark and Paul gave 4 completely different statements. Therefore, the investigators did not take these statements seriously. The police collected more statements related to Lynette's murder. Ronnie Williams, a police informant, gave statements implicating his brother-in-law, Yusef Abdullahi. However, the strained relationship between Ronnie and Yusef led the police to doubt and dismiss this account. Leanne Vilde, who reported Lynette missing on the day of her death, was also a suspect. After intense questioning, she gave a drunken statement naming Stephen and Yusef as the killers. Another eyewitness, Violet Piriam, a secretary at the Cardiff Yacht Club, shed light on the case. 8 months into the investigation, she recalled a crucial detail. On February 14th, while driving home from the club at around 1:30 a.m., she saw 4 excited black men outside the building where Lynette was killed. 2 of them, in particular, she identified as John Actie and Rashid Omar. Piriam's testimony opened a new line of inquiry into the case. Angela Sila, who has a mild intellectual disability, gave a crucial testimony. She said she saw Stephen, John, Rashid, Ronnie Actie, John's cousin Tony Paris, and Tony Brace outside 7 James Street on the day Lynette was murdered. This testimony was important because it matched Violet's testimony and further implicated Youssef, John Stephen, and others. On the same day, Mark and Paul also provided new testimony. They said they saw a group of men, including Ronnie and Youssef. Angela Sila then gave another testimony in December 1988. She said she heard screams from Lynette's flat and ran there with Leanne. Leanne gave a similar testimony on the same day, saying she went to the flat after hearing Lynette's screams and met Stephen, Youssef, Ronnie Actie, Stephen's brother, and an unnamed mixed-race man. However, Angela Sila later got into trouble. She had type AB blood, and police found her blood on Lynette's socks. Sila later gave a new confession, admitting that she was part of the murder, along with Leanne and others. Leanne also admitted that she was forced to cut Lynette's wrists to ensure her complicity and silence. With no way out, Stephen confessed to killing Lynette after 307 denials. He also named other men involved, leading to the arrest of all those accused of the murder. Specifically, the police arrested Stephen Miller, Tony Stephen, Youssef Abdullahi, Ronnie Actie, Rashid Omar, and Martin Tucker on December 7, 1988. 2 days later, John Actie and Tony Paris were also arrested. After nearly a year in custody, their trial began on October 5, 1989 at Swansea Crown Court. It was the longest murder trial in British legal history, lasting 197 days. After 2 years in custody, Ronnie Actie and John Actie were acquitted of murder. Meanwhile, Tony Paris, Stephen Miller, and Youssef Abdullahi were convicted. Each was sentenced to life imprisonment and was known as the Cardiff Three. However, there was no forensic evidence linking the men to the crime scene, which created many doubts and questions about the verdict. Friends and family of the Cardiff Three began a campaign to overturn the verdict. The campaign received widespread support and was followed up by television documentaries in 1992. The Cardiff Three's appeal was finally accepted in December 1992. After hearing Stephen's interrogation, Judge Taylor decided that the police had been abusive in their questioning of Stephen. Therefore, the veracity of Stephen's testimony was no longer important. In the end, the Cardiff Three were acquitted. Their conviction was deemed unsafe and insufficiently supported. However, if the Cardiff Three were not the real criminals, then the real criminal is still at large. This raises the question, who killed Lynette White? 8 years later, the case was reopened. This time, Professor Dave Barkley and Police Chief Kevin O'Neill were assigned to investigate. The case led the police back to the crime scene, where the incident had occurred 12 years earlier. While reviewing old photos of the crime scene, Professor Barkley discovered a crucial detail that no one else had seen all these years: a large drop of blood that might have been splattered from a knife onto the wallpaper. When the crime occurred in 1988, the police had collected several pieces of wallpaper from the apartment as evidence. Upon searching through the old evidence, they discovered that the only missing piece of wallpaper was the one containing the large drop of blood. The forensic team continued to investigate the case, carefully studying photos of the scene. They discovered that the blood might have been hidden under several layers of paint on the baseboards. The team also found traces of blood on a piece of cellophane from a cigarette packet, leading to the suspect being nicknamed Cellophane Man. To find the suspect, the forensic team led by Angela Gallup began collecting and comparing DNA data. However, searching for a matching DNA profile in 140 police databases proved futile as no matches were found. But the forensic team did not give up. They narrowed down the search to hundreds of profiles in the Cardiff area by comparing similar DNA profiles. They eventually found a match between the suspect's DNA profile and that of a 14-year-old boy who was known to the police for driving around Cardiff. Surprisingly, the boy could not be a suspect because he had not been born at the time of the crime 15 years ago. The police still visited the boy's home to investigate. There, they were told that the boy's father had died but that he had an uncle named Jeffrey Gafford. On February 26, 2003, detectives went to Jeffrey's home in the village of Hanharan, 15 miles west of Cardiff. However, Jeffrey's house was empty at the time. The next morning, police went to his workplace in an office building in Cardiff city centre. When they explained the purpose of their visit, Jeffrey said, "I think you've got someone for the job." Jeffrey was then asked to provide a mouth swab, which he agreed to do. The police immediately analyzed the swab and identified a clue that would lead to the murderer. The next morning, Superintendent Kevin O'Neill wanted to get things right so there would be no more mistakes. He assigned a team to watch Jeffrey before he began interviewing him. Chief O'Neill had planned to monitor Jeffrey for a week, but on February 28, 2003, Jeffrey attempted suicide. When the surveillance team caught him in a garage, where he had bought 3 packets of paracetamol, the police immediately took action. When the police arrived at Jeffrey's home, he had taken approximately 62 paracetamol tablets, a significant amount of painkillers. Despite this, Jeffrey tried to hide his actions. When questioned, he made a horrifying confession: "I killed Lynette White. I've been waiting for this for 15 years. I think I deserve this sentence. I really hope to die." Jeffrey was then taken to the hospital, where he once again confessed to the murder he had committed 15 years earlier. Initially refusing treatment, Jeffrey prepared himself to accept death. But he eventually agreed to take the antidote and recovered within a few days. On July 4, 2003, Jeffrey pleaded guilty to the murder of Lynette White in court. Judge Royce sentenced Jeffrey to life imprisonment with a minimum of 12 years and 8 months. Jeffrey's lawyer later revealed that Jeffrey had killed Lynette for over 30 pounds and had sexually assaulted her body. In February 2007, Paul Atkins, Angela Sila, Leanne Vilde, and Mark Gromick were charged with perjury. By December 2008, 3 of them, Angela Sila, Leanne Vilde, and Mark Gromick, were convicted and each sentenced to 18 months in prison. However, Paul Atkins was acquitted because it was believed he had been bullied, threatened, abused, and manipulated into making false statements. In March 2009, it was announced that the prosecution had enough evidence to charge the officers involved in the original investigation for conspiracy to pervert the course of justice. However, in 2011, the trial was dropped due to a lack of evidence. In 2015, 8 of the accused officers brought a civil suit in the High Court against the police force, suing for malicious prosecution, unlawful detention, and wrongful conduct. However, in late 2015, the judge in the civil case dismissed their case. 5 of the wrongfully accused men were awarded compensation after their release. Stephen Miller was paid £571,000, John Actie received £300,000, while Tony Perez was awarded £250,000. 2 other men, Ron Actie and Yusuf Abdullahi, have since died. Ronnie Actie died in 2007 after struggling to come to terms with what had happened to him. Yusuf Abdullahi died in 2011 from cancer after battling post-traumatic stress disorder. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Velma Barfield. Velma Barfield was born in 1932 in Eastover, North Carolina, and grew up in the shadow of the Great Depression. In a poor family of 9 children, Velma's family worked hard on tobacco farms, but life was still difficult. Velma's father, Murphy Bullard, was an outspoken man. Murphy often flew into fits of rage, and Velma claimed that her father physically and mentally abused her and her sisters. Velma's mother, Lily Bullard, suffered from her husband's fiery temper. In their world, love and care were considered luxuries. As a result, Velma and her brothers had a difficult childhood, lacking affection and constantly facing the threat of violence. As a child, Velma noticed a glaring disparity in her finances between herself and her friends. This sparked her first acts of crime. At first, Velma took small amounts of money from her father to buy small items that her classmates liked. However, her stealing gradually became fatter when she stole $80 from an elderly neighbor. When the matter was discovered, her father punished Velma very severely. After that, she gave up stealing. Raised in a Catholic family, Velma found comfort and faith in the Bible. However, as she grew up, the psychological trauma from her past shaped her into a woman with special power. During World War II, the world around her changed rapidly. The war caused her family to face many difficulties. Velma was forced to take responsibility for her life and family early. Her dreams and desires were often hidden behind her primary goal of survival. As Velma grew older, her desire for a better life grew, and she longed to escape her difficult circumstances. At the age of 17, Velma decided to drop out of school. In her search for love and work, she met Thomas Burke, and the two later married, but this marriage brought new difficulties. By the age of 19, Velma had 2 children, a son named Ron and a daughter named Kim. For more than 15 years, the family lived in Parkton, North Carolina. In 1965, Thomas was in a serious car accident and suffered head injuries. To cope with the pain and headaches caused by the injury, Thomas became a heavy drinker and drug addict. This affected his family, especially Velma, who had experienced past trauma due to her father's alcohol abuse. Velma vowed never to let history repeat itself, but she also faced difficulties in her own life. During this time, Velma faced many pressures, including an unhappy marriage, motherhood, and past patterns. Velma tried to find stability by working at a textile factory, but she soon had to quit to deal with health issues. She then had to undergo an emergency hysterectomy. After the surgery, Velma began to suffer from seizures and was prescribed medication. However, the use of seizure medication gradually became a habit, causing her to become mentally impaired. Velma's drinking increased, each step pushing her into a more desperate and out-of-control state. On April 4, 1969, while she and her children were away from home, the house caught fire. Thomas, who was still in the house, died of smoke inhalation. After the fire, Velma and her children moved in with her parents. A few months after her Thomas's death, Velma began a relationship with a divorced man named Jennings Barfield. They married in August 1970. However, their relationship did not last. After an argument, Jennings died of a heart attack on March 21, 1971. Velma returned to her parents' home. Later, Velma's father died of cancer in the summer of 1974. Her mother also suffered from severe stomach pain and was hospitalized. Although she recovered and returned home in August 1974, Velma's mother was hospitalized again due to severe stomach pain. Because her illness was so severe, she died after 2 hours of treatment. Another man Velma was dating was in a car accident and died on December 30th of the same year. Velma's financial difficulties and addiction led to another bad decision. She started forging checks to meet her growing needs. But deception came at a cost, and those around her began to lose faith in Velma. In 1975, Velma was convicted of 7 counts of writing bad checks and sentenced to 6 months in prison. However, she was released after serving 3 months. After her release in 1976, Velma took a job caring for the elderly. She initially worked for 94-year-old Montgomery Edwards and his 84-year-old wife in Lumberton, North Carolina. Montgomery fell ill and died on January 29, 1977. A few weeks later, in February, Montgomery's wife Dolly developed symptoms of the same stomach illness as Velma's mother and died on March 1. Velma then cared for Record Lee, 76, who had lost a leg. On June 4, 1977, Record Lee's husband, John Henry, began experiencing severe pain and cramps in his abdomen. Doctors attributed his condition to a severe stomach virus. However, he died later that month. Velma then moved in with her new boyfriend, Roland Stewart. While attending a Pentecostal revival meeting in Cumberland County, Roland Stewart suddenly complained of severe abdominal pain. He was rushed to the hospital but could not be saved, dying a few days later. Roland Stewart's relatives were suspicious of his mysterious death. They reported to the police to find out the reason for Roland Stewart's death. An autopsy was ordered. An investigation into Roland Stewart's death was opened. Before the autopsy results were released, Lumberton police received an anonymous phone call, reportedly from Velma's sister, who said that Velma had poisoned Roland Stewart and others. As a result, Velma was arrested for the murder of Roland Stewart. During the interrogation, Velma confessed to poisoning Montgomery and Dolly Edwards, John Henry, her mother Lillian, and her boyfriend Roland Stewart. Velma confessed that she had forged checks to her boyfriend Roland Stewart's account and that he had found out about it, so Velma had mixed rat poison into his beer and tea, and in previous victims Velma had given weed killers containing paraquat and barbiturates. Velma had secretly put these substances into her victims' food or drinks, leading to their deaths. At trial, Velma's defense attorney argued that she was insane, but this was not accepted. Velma appeared cold and emotionless, laughing at the prosecutor and even applauding after his closing speech. The defense attorney attempted to explain that Velma was not a monster but a soul trapped by addiction, and that the difficult circumstances she had experienced since childhood had caused Velma actions to be beyond her control. The attorney emphasized Velma's mental health struggles as a mitigating factor in Velma's crimes. December 12, 1978. The jury considered the circumstances and decided to sentence Velma to death for murder and causing harm to the victim's family. The verdict was an acknowledgement of the victim's family's irreplaceable loss. A unit for female death row inmates was later established at the North Carolina Correctional Institution for Women. While on death row, Velma quit smoking and expressed remorse. At night, the faces of her victims haunted her dreams, and Velma silently contemplated the crimes she had committed. Velma's appeal was filed with the North Carolina Supreme Court on October 30, 1984. The appeal claimed that she was incompetent at her original trial due to her struggles with drug addiction. However, the court denied her appeal. The day before her execution, Velma instructed her attorney, Jimmy, to withdraw all remaining appeals. She expressed her desire to die with dignity, as allowed by the state of North Carolina. In her final hours, Velma reflected on her life and prayed, finding solace in her faith as she prepared for death. Pastor Billy Graham offered her words of comfort over the phone, saying, "Velma, in a way I envy you because you're going to get to heaven before I do." Velma was executed on November 2, 1984, at the Central Penitentiary in Raleigh. Before her execution, she expressed remorse for the pain she had caused, stating that she was deeply sorry for the pain she had caused and that many families had suffered greatly. She also expressed her gratitude to those who had supported her over the past 6 years, saying that she appreciated the unwavering support of her family, her attorneys, and the kindness of the prison staff, and that she was grateful for their compassion and understanding during this difficult time. For her final meal, Velma chose a simple snack of cheese doodles and a Coca-Cola. She spent her last hours with family members and friends who visited her before her execution. Despite the circumstances, Velma remained calm and at peace. Velma was led to her execution wearing pink pajamas and medical devices attached to her chest, including a stethoscope and heart monitor. She was secured to a gurney with straps at her body and legs, and then wheeled to the execution chamber just before 2 a.m. Outside the prison. Two opposing groups of protesters had gathered. Pro-death penalty supporters were present, and anti-death penalty advocates, who criticized Governor Hunt for not showing compassion and claimed the woman could still contribute positively to society from behind bars. As the execution approached, other inmates demonstrated their anxiety by banging on the windows of their cells in unison. A group of about 80 people who supported capital punishment showed their approval through cheers and applause. 3 volunteers carried out the execution, with a dummy intravenous line ensuring that none knew for certain which of them had administered the fatal dose. Velma's execution took place at 2:15 a.m., just 15 minutes after being given the lethal injection of proton bromide. Those present at the execution reported that she passed away without any apparent suffering. Around 300 death penalty opponents stood nearby in silence, holding candles that they extinguished as the moment of her death approached. After the execution, Velma's body was taken by ambulance to a medical school for use in her previously expressed wish to donate her organs for transplantation. Her burial followed at a small North Carolina cemetery close to the gravesite of her first husband, Thomas Burke. She was 52 years old at the time of her death. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Natalie Connolly. Natalie Connolly is a beautiful and charming woman who has a stunning appearance identical to her twin sister. Her sister is equally beautiful, and they share a close bond not only because of their similar appearance but also because of their deep connection. Natalie has a special ability to bring joy to those around her. She can easily make people laugh and chat with anyone she meets. Despite facing the challenges of being a single mother, Natalie always strives to ensure that her daughter, Madison, does not lack anything. Her care and love for Madison are evident in her constant presence and attention. In a crowded bar, Natalie meets John, a charming and elegant man. They are attracted to each other from the beginning, and their relationship gradually blossoms. John's charm and wit quickly capture Natalie's heart. They exchange contact information and begin to delve deeper into their relationship. As Natalie spends more time with John, she feels an irresistible attraction to him. This was evident from the moment they first met, even though she had no idea of his profession or wealth at the time. As they grow closer, John reveals that he is a millionaire. His wealth is displayed through lavish gifts and fancy dinners at top restaurants. Natalie is fascinated by John's gentlemanly and elegant style, as well as his lavish mansion. However, behind John's charming exterior, there is much more mystery. His life is far more complicated than he lets on. While engaged to a pregnant partner and expecting a second child, John hides the existence of 3 other children. His relationship with Natalie is actually an affair, which continues even as John deals with the breakup of his previous relationship. Eventually, John chooses to turn his attention to Natalie. Their romance seems like a fairy tale from the start. John and Madison become close quickly, and Natalie soon wins the hearts of John's children. John treats Natalie to lavish and romantic experiences, from spa trips to hiring a chauffeur. It seems like he is making all her dreams come true. However, when Natalie moves in with John in Kinver, Stafford, England, the truth slowly emerges. Their relationship, initially fueled by passion, reveals its true nature once they live under the same roof. As they spend every waking moment together, they begin to understand each other better. However, John's interests start to annoy her. He enjoys intimate interactions and often leaves bruises and scratches. Romantic gestures and lavish dinners lose their appeal as Natalie realizes that she has to pay a high price for all of them. Natalie once thought her relationship with John was a fairy tale, but now she realizes the harsh truth behind it. Fearing abandonment, she still accepts John's demands during their intense sexual encounters. She recalls how John abandoned his pregnant ex-fiancée and fears the same thing will happen to her. Despite this, Natalie still feels fulfilled in the relationship and does not want to leave because she fears returning to her old monotonous life. She seeks comfort and guidance from her sister and mother, sharing the bruises and scratches John leaves during their intense sexual encounters. She admits that John enjoys causing her pain. Natalie faces a difficult situation as her relationship with John brings her happiness but also has negative aspects. She is caught in a dilemma of wanting to maintain her luxurious lifestyle with John while being dissatisfied with the intimate aspect of the relationship. The tension between them increases as they both seek out other relationships. As John continues to chat with other women, Natalie also begins texting other men without John's knowledge. When John discovers these exchanges, he becomes very angry. Although John makes no secret of his interactions with other women, he strongly objects to Natalie interacting with other men, highlighting the unfairness of their relationship. Despite John's attempts to hide his insecurities, he invites Natalie out for a casual evening on December 18, 2016, which includes drinks, football, and dinner. John forces Natalie to drink heavily and even offers her cocaine, albeit in smaller amounts than he consumes. This was not the first time he had created such a situation, suggesting a pattern of behavior intended to make Natalie more comfortable before committing bad acts on her when they were home alone. This raises the question of whether Natalie's heavy drinking on these occasions was an attempt to dull the pain she knew she would endure behind closed doors with him. John wanted to be in complete control of the situation, ensuring he could carry out his intentions towards Natalie without being hindered. Therefore, he carefully controlled his alcohol intake, aiming to achieve a mild state of intoxication that did not affect his performance during their sexual encounters. After what seemed like a pleasant day out, ending with a satisfying meal at one of their favorite places, John arranged for a driver to take them home. However, beneath the normal appearance, John's evil intentions were hidden. That day, Natalie was in a drunken state, which only worsened as dinner failed to sober her up or absorb the alcohol. She was disoriented, stumbling out of the car as they arrived home, accidentally leaving her phone behind. Instead of letting Natalie recover from her drunkenness, John had other intentions. He returned to retrieve Natalie's phone, but it is unclear whether he had seen her messages. Natalie became the victim of John's cruel actions as he attempted to inflict maximum harm on her. He attacked her in various ways, including punching, kicking, stomping, and the disgusting act of throwing bleach at her face and genitals. To add to her pain, John used a bottle of carpet cleaner, using its nozzle as a weapon. After the attack, he left Natalie naked and bloody at the bottom of the stairs, her dress pulled up around her waist, leaving her to suffer from her injuries. Natalie lay motionless in a pool of blood when John left the bed. A few hours later, when he awoke, he discovered that Natalie had died from the severe injuries she had sustained, totaling 40. John's subsequent actions, including his nonchalant call to emergency services, revealed his twisted mentality. He showed no emotion or remorse when he informed the paramedics of his futile attempts at CPR and referred to Natalie's unresponsive state with indifference. As the paramedics loaded Natalie's body into the ambulance, John remained silent and emotionless, observing the tragic consequences of his actions. After Natalie was pronounced dead, John was arrested. To justify his cruel actions, John made the excuse that the rough sex had gone too far and claimed his innocence. He alleged that Natalie had consented to the rough actions, claiming that she had initiated them and that she had been the one who desired all these brutal actions. According to John, Natalie allegedly requested rough sex, including being injured, beaten, and even having a bottle of carpet cleaner inserted into her. John claimed that, despite bleeding and in pain, Natalie allegedly reassured him that she was safe and wanted to continue. However, John's account is not credible. He attempted to deflect blame by saying that Natalie had agreed to engage in rough sex and that they had engaged in similar acts many times without issue. When asked about leaving Natalie partially clothed at the bottom of the stairs, John offered a weak excuse, claiming it was a regular occurrence and that he had never provided a blanket because the house was always warm. Throughout the proceedings, John showed no remorse or regret for his actions. Instead, he placed the blame squarely on Natalie. His attempts to shift the blame left onlookers frustrated. Despite being convicted of manslaughter, John received a lenient sentence of 3 years and 8 months, but only served 22 months before being released. Natalie Connolly's case sparked widespread criticism and controversy, leading Fiona McKenzie to launch the "We Can't Agree with This" movement in December 2018. The movement aims to promote discussion about sexual assault and calls for the removal of the rough sex defense. In Fiona's view, the defense minimizes and legitimizes violence in intimate relationships, perpetuates harmful stereotypes, and devalues the experiences of survivors. However, in interviews, Fiona has been surprised that some people, despite disagreeing with the court's decision, have accepted it. The reason for this acceptance is that they believe the incident was isolated, not a systemic problem. However, this way of thinking often leads to victim blaming, with survivors being held responsible for the risks that may have resulted from their behavior. Such attitudes highlight the need for continued advocacy and education to challenge harmful beliefs and support survivors of sexual violence. The Domestic Violence Bill was passed by Parliament on July 6, 2020, and following royal assent on April 29, 2021, it became law and is known as the Domestic Violence Act 2021. This marks a significant step forward in combating domestic violence and preventing perpetrators from using harmful excuses to justify their actions. Natalie's loss has left a deep void in the lives of her family and friends. They are still grappling with the pain of her loss. However, their unwavering love and support for Natalie is a testament to her strong and resilient spirit. The community has come together to raise awareness of domestic violence and support survivors on their journeys to healing and recovery. Their solidarity and compassion are an inspiration and hope to those struggling. Although Natalie Connolly's life was tragically cut short, her memory will live on in the hearts of those who knew and loved her. Her story will hopefully inspire us to come together to fight domestic violence and support those in need. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Judy Blake Morlannon. Judy Blake was born on October 16, 1957, in Hancock, Michigan, into a conservative family. As the only daughter, Judy was loved dearly by her parents and 2 older brothers. Her parents, Dale and Marianne, were active members of the Redeemer Free Lutheran Church and also ran a successful business called Dale Service. Through this, they provided Judy with a comfortable life in a warm environment. In 1974, Judy met Bruce Morlannon. Both worked in the healthcare industry, with Judy as a nurse and Bruce as a support worker. The age difference was only 3 years, yet the two were complete opposites. While Judy was shy and gentle, Bruce was outgoing and confident. Judy's family was a little apprehensive about Bruce, but love helped Judy and Bruce convince their families, and they got married in 1978. In the following years, Judy's family tried to accept and make Bruce an integral part of her life. It seemed to work because Bruce got along well with Judy's family. Another happy turning point came in 1989 when Judy gave birth to their daughter, Elise. However, the joy and peace in their family life were short-lived. On November 29, 1992, after Thanksgiving, Judy and Bruce visited Judy's family and brought Elise with them. It was also the last day of hunting season in the Upper Peninsula. Bruce and Judy's brothers went into the nearby woods to hunt deer on Sunday morning, while Judy stayed at home with her mother and Elise. Judy took her Springer Spaniel and her parents' dog, Streak, for a walk in the woods behind the Blake home on Highway 38 in Ontonagon County, Michigan. When Judy's mother, Mary Ann, said goodbye to her daughter, she had no idea it would be the last time she would see her. 2.5 hours passed without Judy, and Mary Ann became worried. Although Judy was familiar with the woods, the possibility of an accident or trouble was concerning, especially since hunting was still ongoing. A neighbor joined Mary Ann in searching for Judy. As it grew dark, the two women had difficulty following Judy's footprints along the trail. After nearly an hour of searching, Mary Ann came across a terrifying sight. On one of the trails in the woods, Mary Ann saw Judy lying motionless. The dogs were still circling the area. When they tried to turn Judy over, they found a terrible wound and bleeding in her chest, indicating that Judy was no longer alive. When Mary Ann discovered Judy's death, she ran home and reported the incident to the local authorities. Investigators soon determined that Judy had died from a gunshot wound. Although the night was getting colder, the police decided to search the woods with flashlights in hand. However, after searching the entire area, they still did not find many clues, including the bullet that killed Judy. However, they did find one important trace, a burn mark on a maple tree. Detective Bob Ball, who was in charge of the case, believed that the burn mark could have been caused by the bullet that killed Judy. He hoped that if the bullet was found, it would shed some light on the case. Forensic tests later confirmed that the burn mark was indeed caused by a bullet. Based on the position of the body in the burn marks, investigators concluded that the bullet struck Judy first, passed through her heart, exited her body through her left side, hit a tree, and eventually landed somewhere in the woods. Initially, the incident was ruled a tragic accident. Investigators believed that a stray bullet from an unknown hunter killed Judy, which was not unusual in the area. However, determining who was responsible for Judy's death was a difficult task, as bullets from high-powered rifles can often travel 3 miles or more. Most of the time, hunters don't realize that their bullets have killed a person. While Judy's body is being taken to the medical examiner's office, the detectives begin interviewing family members. Everyone seems deeply saddened by the tragedy, but an unusual statement from Bruce makes Detective Bob uncomfortable. Bruce criticizes Judy for not being more careful. Bruce becomes a suspect because, in most brutal cases, the person closest to the victim is usually the suspect. However, Detective Bob also knows that Bruce may just be a husband trying to hide his grief. Bruce's brothers claim that Bruce was with them all day, and they are certain that he had nothing to do with Judy's death. They are even unhappy with the police for considering Bruce a suspect. After 2 days, the autopsy report reveals an important detail about the time of death, estimating it at around 3 p.m. When Detective Bob returns to interview Judy's family again with this new information, Bruce's relatives reveal that although Bruce was with them for most of the day, they did not see him at a particular time. Judy's family, however, remains completely convinced of his innocence. They believe the investigation is flawed in accusing a man who is still grieving the loss of his wife. However, they do not know that the detectives have their own reasons for believing that Judy's death was not an accident. By analyzing the trajectory of the bullet and forensic evidence, investigators find that the bullet entered the body at an upward angle. This is a significant finding because if Judy had been shot by a hunter, the bullet would have entered the body at a downward angle. This raises the suspicion that Judy's death was a targeted murder. However, one question remains: was the killer really Bruce? To verify their suspicions, the detectives decide to summon Bruce for a thorough investigation. On December 11, 1992, just 12 days after the investigation began, Bruce is invited to the sheriff's office for a formal interview. After a brief interview with Detective Bob, Bruce recounts in detail where he had been on the day his wife died and provides the names of nearly 30 people who witnessed his presence that day. However, There is a suspicious 30-minute gap in Bruce's itinerary on the day of the incident that he cannot explain. Despite his repeated claims of having nothing to do with his wife's death, this gap causes Detective Bob to begin questioning what Bruce might be hiding. The truth about Bruce's guilt remains unclear, but his behavior raises suspicions. After his wife's death, Bruce does not spend much time on the funeral. Over the following weeks, he goes skiing, hangs out with friends, and even flirts with some of his deceased wife's friends instead of taking care of his daughter. This causes Judy's family to begin suspecting Bruce, although they initially supported him. Bruce's behavior is the cause of this suspicion. The police are actively investigating the case but have not yet found any concrete evidence against him. To gain information, Detective Bob asks some of Bruce's friends and colleagues to secretly follow him and report back to the police if they see anything suspicious. This method of surveillance reveals an important detail. One of the people asked to follow Bruce is Gail, a 35-year-old colleague. She has a remarkable story to tell the detectives about Bruce. Shortly after the funeral, Bruce shows up uninvited at Gail's house, carrying 5 boxes filled with his deceased wife's belongings. After placing the boxes on Gail's porch, Bruce left before Gail could ask for more information. Since it was the holidays, Gail left the boxes outside for a while without paying attention to them. When she opened the boxes, she discovered that most of them were filled with Judy's clothes. But in one of the boxes, under the pile of clothes, Gail found a letter written 6 months earlier and signed by Judy. Finding this letter was a surprise to Gail, as she had only met Judy once. What was even stranger was the content of the letter. The letter began with Judy's request that Gail keep her old clothes as a souvenir, as she believed that Gail was the only person Bruce trusted. The letter then went into many intimate details about Bruce and Judy's marriage, about why they were no longer compatible and were on the verge of divorce. The letter even mentioned that Bruce needed a new girlfriend. The strangest thing about the letter was that the writer ended by praising Bruce's ability in bed. The letter immediately made Gail feel that something was wrong. The detectives felt the same way. To verify the authenticity of the letter, they showed it to forensic examiner James Stegall. He was tasked with comparing the letter to a sample of Judy's handwriting to see if it was really written by Judy. Handwriting analysis revealed that the handwriting in the letter indicated the speed of the writer, appearing slow and deliberate, which could be a sign of forgery. Judy was ruled out as the author of the letter, but it was also impossible to definitively confirm that the handwriting was Bruce's. With no conclusive evidence against Bruce, the detectives had to rely on limited resources to find more information. Detective Bob decided to continue interviewing Gail. Gail revealed that Bruce had been trying to get her attention for a long time, even before Judy's death. However, Gail, who is happily married, only sees Bruce as a nuisance. Bruce constantly flirts, but Gail deliberately ignores him and hopes he will give up. Gail is not the only one who dislikes Bruce. No one has a good word to say about him. At work, he often flirts with other female employees, causing everyone to try to stay away. His colleagues complain that he is difficult to work with. Gail also reveals that after his wife passed away, he bragged about being rich. According to Gail, this was just his attempt to seduce her. This information makes Detective Bob interested in investigating Bruce's marriage. They speculate that Bruce and Judy often quarrel because of Bruce's habit of flirting at work, but it is uncertain whether Judy is aware of Bruce's behavior towards female colleagues at work. However, the detective also discovered that Bruce and Judy's financial problems, caused primarily by Bruce's irresponsibility in overspending, had occurred in the months leading up to Judy's death. Bruce was deeply in debt and the situation had become so serious that he was forced to borrow money from one place to pay off another. Judy had always managed her finances well throughout the marriage with her income, but she eventually began to resent Bruce, especially when she was given the added responsibility of caring for their daughter. The detectives discovered that a few weeks before Judy's death, Bruce had begun taking out multiple insurance policies in Judy's name, some of which had a double payout clause if Judy died in an accident. Detective Bob wondered if Bruce saw this as an opportunity to solve his financial problems and get out of the marriage with Judy. In fact, after Judy's death, Bruce was due to receive $330,000 from her insurance policies. What made investigators shudder was that in 1991, nearly 14 months before Judy's death, she had suffered a horrific accident. An 85-pound chimney block accidentally fell from the roof where Bruce was working, hitting Judy in the head and nearly killing her. Fortunately, she survived the attack, although she suffered a severe concussion and was hospitalized for several days. In another shocking development, a fire broke out in her house while Judy was sleeping alone. Fortunately, Judy woke up in time, called the fire department, and escaped once again. After these two incidents, Judy was very frightened. Some of Judy's friends told detectives that she had expressed her intention to leave her husband. Although she had a premonition that something was wrong, she stayed for the sake of her daughter. Judy's family was unaware of her feelings. At this point, Detective Bob Ball was almost certain that Bruce had killed his wife and deliberately staged it as a hunting accident, but he lacked physical evidence. He contacted Dan Castle, a metal detector expert who had helped the police many times before. Knowing that the fatal bullet might still be somewhere in the woods, Detective Bob asked Dan Castle to find it. Dan worked with his metal detector every day, but after searching for weeks without finding anything, he had a problem. The snow had covered up all traces of the bullet. Despite the setback, Dan was not ready to give up. He decided to experiment by using a slingshot to recreate the trajectory of the bullet and determine where it might have landed. Luckily, the idea worked. When he searched the area where his marble ricocheted in the snow, he found the bullet about 80 feet from a maple tree. The discovery of the bullet was important, but authorities needed to determine whether it was the bullet that killed Judy or just another bullet fired during hunting season. Ray Kenny, a firearms examiner from the Marquette State Police Crime Lab, was assigned to analyze the bullet. A few days later, he discovered some important details. It was a .30 caliber bullet from a Moss rifle, and it contained wood fibers. Kenny determined that this was the bullet that had hit the tree, but there was more evidence stuck inside. Kenny found a small pink fiber from Judy's shirt and some black fibers from her jacket. Finally, a crucial link was discovered, creating a major breakthrough in the case. Investigators then focused on Bruce's gun collection. They examined all the rifles that could have fired the bullet collected from the scene and identified 4 weapons that could have been involved. Bruce was forced to tell the truth, but he still chose to lie and denied owning any of the rifles. However, his luck ran out when Judy and Bruce's financial records showed a loan document that listed his gun collection as collateral. Detectives also found an asset list that included a gun that Bruce had not declared. It was a rifle with a scope, matching one of the 4 guns that could have fired the bullet. In the end, investigators concluded that the gun was probably the murder weapon. On April 23, 1993, after 5 months of investigation, Bruce agreed to take a polygraph test after many delays and evasions. During the first part of the test, Bruce calmly answered the investigators' questions. However, when the detectives placed Gail's letter in front of him, the interview took a critical turn. For the first time, Bruce changed his story and confessed to killing his wife after months of denial, perhaps because he realized Gail had cooperated with the police or feared that the authorities were finally closing in on him. With tears in his eyes, Bruce revealed that on November 29, 1992, he saw an opportunity to kill his wife. However, he said that the first 2 times he saw Judy from a distance, he aimed but could not shoot. The third time, he closed his eyes, pulled the trigger, and Judy was fatally shot. Bruce explained that his motive for killing Judy was her threat to divorce him, which he did not want to happen. He claimed that Judy was a strict wife both at work and at home, and was not good at cooking. Bruce said that he threw the rifle into a nearby river, but the police could not find it after searching the water. He also pointed out an error in the medical examiner's report. Although the report said Judy was shot on the left side of the chest, Bruce insisted that she was actually shot on the right side and the bullet exited the left side. This detail was crucial to his confession, as only the killer would know this. Bruce was immediately arrested and charged with premeditated murder. Surprisingly, despite his confession, he pleaded not guilty, claiming that the police had coerced him into confessing. Despite the overwhelming evidence against Bruce, prosecutors decided to seek more evidence in preparation for the trial. Investigators reenacted the moving of the chimney, which Bruce had previously said he had accidentally pushed with his foot. However, they discovered that the chimney was too heavy to have been moved accidentally and required a deliberate act to make it fall. With dozens of witnesses and a wealth of evidence, the trial swung in favor of the prosecution. During this time, Bruce barely moved but burst into tears when Gale took the stand to testify. The defense, on the other hand, had no witnesses to testify. Bruce's attorney, Thomas Castleman, said all of their witnesses refused to appear out of fear. He called the investigation a witch hunt and accused the police of improperly obtaining confessions. As expected, the jury did not believe Bruce's story, and on December 15, 1993, they returned a guilty verdict. On January 21, 1994, Bruce Moylanen was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The sentence brought comfort to Judy's family. After the tragedy, Judy's brother and sister-in-law, David and Yvonne Blake, adopted 5-year-old Elise. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Sajini. In December 2002, Thurun Jinaraj and Sajini Krishnan, a newlywed couple, started their life together. Thurun and Sajini's marriage was arranged, but the couple was very happy and were building a life together in their apartment. Thurun, a physical education teacher at a local school and a volleyball coach, his wife, Sajini, worked at a bank. Whenever Thurun went to watch volleyball, he would remind his wife, Sajini, that due to the unsafe burglary situation in the area, Sajini should go to her father's house instead of staying alone in their apartment. Sajini's father lived nearby, so she would go to her father's house whenever Thurun went to watch volleyball. On February 5, 2003, Sajini visited her father's house for the last time. Before leaving, she said that she needed money to fill up her car's gas tank. Sajini's father was surprised and asked if Thurun was taking good care of her. Sajini appeared angry and dismissed her father's concerns, saying, "Dad, there's no such thing." Her short reply made her father feel uncomfortable, thinking that it might just be a minor disagreement between the couple. On February 14, 2003, at 7:30 p.m., Sajini had a phone conversation with her sister that lasted about 15 minutes. 2 hours later, at about 9:30 p.m., Thurun contacted Sajini's father, informing him to come to the hospital immediately because Sajini's condition was critical. Family members rushed to the hospital and found that Sajini had passed away. Thurun was deeply moved and cried loudly. Sajini's cause of death was determined to be strangulation with a scarf. When the police arrived at the scene, Thurun reported that their house had been broken into, jewelry and money had been stolen, and belongings had been thrown around. Initially, the police suspected that the thieves might have killed Sajini when she discovered them. Thurun's emotional state was so shocked that he couldn't stop crying. His pain was too great, and as a result, his condition worsened. He was so distraught that he couldn't even attend Sajini's funeral. Due to his deteriorating condition, Thurun was hospitalized, where his family provided him with emotional support. Meanwhile, the police were working to identify potential suspects by compiling a list of known thieves in the area. On February 16, 2003, 2 days after Sajini's death, Thurin's brother contacted the police, informing them that Thurin had escaped from the hospital. The police were shocked to find that Thurin had escaped from the hospital. Initially, they had assumed that Thurin was completely innocent due to his poor condition, so the police did not assign anyone to closely monitor Thurin while he was in the hospital. However, Thurin's sudden disappearance aroused the police's suspicions. Sajini's family began questioning the police, demanding to know why they had let their guard down and allowed Thurin to escape. As the case attracted widespread media attention, the pressure on the police increased. They immediately launched a thorough search for Thurin. Meanwhile, Thurin's family was also brought in for questioning by the police, but they were released after a few days. Thurin lived with Sajini in an apartment, while the rest of his family lived elsewhere. A massive search operation was launched across the city to find Thurin. The police set up roadblocks at several locations. Despite these efforts, Thurin remained undetected. Pressure from Sajini's family on the police led to the announcement of a large reward for anyone providing information on Thurin's whereabouts. However, even this lucrative offer failed to yield any leads. Police searches were ultimately unsuccessful. It was later revealed that Thurin had been mistreating Sajini since their marriage, motivated by his extramarital affair with another woman. The police eventually tracked down the girl Thurin had been involved with. She told them that on February 16, Thurin had called her and asked her to marry him. However, she had already learned about Sajini's death by then. As a result, she rejected Thurin's proposal outright, telling him she couldn't marry someone suspected of murder. After that, Thurin and the girl lost contact. Nearly 6 years passed without any update on Thurin from the police. The police kept a close watch on Thurin's family, thinking that he might contact or return home. However, Thurin did not see or contact his family during this time. The police discovered that exactly 6 years after the incident, Thurin had visited his parents in another state, but only briefly, as his father had passed away just a day later. Although the police expected Thurin to return for his father's funeral, Thurin did not return. In 2016, a new officer joined the department and reviewed the case file, asking for an update. The police informed him of the current situation, that Thurin's father had passed away, his mother was ill and living in Madhya Pradesh, and his brother lived in Ahmedabad, but there was still no information about Thurin's whereabouts. The police conducted another investigation by discreetly monitoring the area around Thurin's mother's house, looking for any young men who might visit her. Unfortunately, no leads were found. The police then decided to question the girl who had a relationship with Thurin. She reported that she had not had any contact with Thurin since the incident. However, some of her friends had recently mentioned to her that they thought they saw someone who looked like Thurin at a mall in Delhi. The police formed a team to investigate this new information and visited the mall in Delhi. They checked the footage from all the surveillance cameras, but could not find any evidence of Thurin. After receiving multiple reports of sightings of Thurin in various states, the police became increasingly convinced that he was still alive. They therefore launched a thorough investigation by analyzing around 4,000 mobile phone numbers linked to Thurin's family and friends, hoping to uncover a vital clue. Although their search did not yield any significant breakthroughs, the police were determined to find Thurin. They kept a close watch on his mother's phone, scrutinizing her calls to identify her contacts. Thurin's mother received a call on her mobile phone from a landline number in Bengaluru, also known as the Silicon Valley of India. The call originated from the customer care service of a Bengaluru-based Oracle company. This made the police wonder about the connection between Thurin's mother and the Oracle company. The police suspected that Thurin, whom they were looking for, might be working at the Oracle office in Bengaluru. A police team traveled from Ahmedabad to Bengaluru to investigate further. On October 22, 2018, police visited the Oracle office and met the HR department, but police did not disclose the real purpose of their visit. Instead, they informed the HR department that police needed a list of all employees for law and order purposes. The HR department cooperated and provided the police with a complete list of all Oracle employees. In order to avoid being detected by Thuran, the police had to be extremely careful in their approach, as they knew that Thuran would likely escape if he realized that the police were following him. The problem was, Thuran's name was not on the list that Oracle had provided to the police. This made them worry that their efforts might be in vain. However, one name on the list stood out: Parvin Batelli. When the police recalled that Thuran's mother often spoke to Parvin and his wife, Nisha, this connection piqued the police's interest, and they decided to gather more information about Parvin and Nisha in the hope of finding clues about Thuran. The police found it suspicious that Parvin and Nisha were not active on social media, as this is a rare phenomenon in today's digital age, when most people actively share their lives on social media. The police learned that Thuran's mother frequently talked to Parvin Batelli. In addition, Parvin and Nisha had 2 children. The police began to suspect that Parvin Batelli could be Thuran. Therefore, the police began to collect evidence against him. One feature of Thuran's finger during his time as a volleyball coach was a broken and slightly bent finger on his ring hand. On October 23, 2 policemen went to Oracle's customer service office in Bangalore to meet Parvin. When one of the policemen shook hands with Parvin, the policeman immediately recognized Thuran because of the familiar broken finger. The policeman said, "Thuran, your game is over." Upon hearing Thuran's name, Parvin's condition worsened. Thuran's mistake began when his cell phone stopped working, leaving him worried about his mother. Thuran used his office landline instead of a number he could safely use to contact his mother. This last mistake led to his arrest. If he had not used his office landline, the police likely would not have found him. Thuran was taken to Ahmedabad by the police, where he confessed to the crime, admitting to killing his wife Sajini Krishnan. Thuran shared the entire story with the police. After the murder, Thuran proposed to a friend, but was rejected. He then moved to Pune, took up a small job, and met Nisha. Thuran tricked Nisha into believing that he was an orphan with no family, after which the two got married. The couple moved to Bangalore in 2009, where Thuran began working for Oracle. After years of investigation and manhunt, Thuran Jinaraj was finally recaptured in 2019. In March 2021, he was sentenced to life in prison for attempted murder. Hello again, true crime fans, we've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Anupama Gulati. Anupama, who lives with her husband and 2 children, was born and raised in Dehradun, but her parents and brother were often worried because they could not reach her on the phone. Since her family used to call her frequently, this loss of contact worried her family. Anupama's brother, Sujan Pradhan, decided to call Anupama's husband, Rajesh Gulati, whom she had been married to since 1999, to ask about his sister. However, every time Sujan Pradhan called, Rajesh would say that Anupama was either busy or had gone on a business trip. This went on for about 2 weeks. During this time, Anupama contacted her brother via email, informing him that she was completely fine and very happy with her husband and 2 children. This reassured her family. However, when they continued to be unable to reach Anupama on the phone, her parents asked Sujan Pradhan to go to Dehradun and meet Anupama. On December 12, 2010, when Sujan Pradhan went to Rajesh's house, Rajesh greeted him unfriendly and said that Anupama was elsewhere and he could not meet her right away. On the other hand, Sujan Pradhan tried to break into Rajesh's house, leading to heated arguments between the two. However, Rajesh did not allow Sujan to enter the house. When Sujan asked Rajesh about Anupama, Rajesh did not provide a satisfactory answer. Sujan decided to go to the nearby police station and filed a missing report for his younger sister, Anupama Gulati. In the report, he also said that he was trying to enter the house but was prevented by Rajesh. The police found the case suspicious and went to Rajesh Gulati's house. When Rajesh saw the police with Sujan, Rajesh tried to remain calm. The police asked Rajesh about Anupama, but Rajesh did not answer directly and tried to distract them. However, the police soon discovered Rajesh's cunning and decided to conduct a full search of the house. During the search, the police noticed a closed room. When the room was opened, there was nothing unusual except a large freezer. The police found the presence of a freezer very strange because such appliances are commonly used in large shops and restaurants. The police wondered why Rajesh would buy such a large freezer for his small family, but he just kept quiet. The police decided to open the freezer to investigate and found many small black bags inside. When they opened one bag, they discovered pieces of meat and then took out some more envelopes. The surprise came when they found a human skull in one of these envelopes. Rajesh Gulati then confessed to the police that the pieces were the body of his wife, Anupama. He broke down in tears and narrated the story. After his confession, the police arrested Rajesh and took him to a local court. There, he was remanded in custody for 5 days. During further investigation, the police discovered a surprising piece of information. Rajesh explained that he had met Anupama at Delhi University, where they both studied and got to know each other. They soon developed feelings for each other and started falling in love. Initially, they kept their relationship a secret from their families, but later decided to go public and asked for permission to get married. Both families agreed and they had a grand wedding in 1999. After marriage, Rajesh's career grew rapidly, and he found a job in a large company in the US. Rajesh and Anupama moved to the US so that he could work as a software engineer. They were living comfortably now, and they had bought a house, which meant that their finances were stable. However, after a few months, Anupama started feeling lonely because Rajesh often went to work every day and she had to stay home alone. During her boredom, Anupama often contacted a close friend of Rajesh's. Later, Rajesh found out that Anupama had become close friends with a close friend of his. Rajesh felt uncomfortable knowing that Anupama and his friend were talking on the phone frequently. This caused many arguments between them. Rajesh asked Anupama many times to stay away from his friend, but she did not listen. This made the situation worse in their home. However, in 2006, Anupama gave birth to twins, and the birth of a daughter and a son brought happiness and harmony to the family. While living in the US, Rajesh and Anupama enjoyed a fairly comfortable life. However, that was completely disrupted in 2007 and 2008 when the US fell into an economic recession, leaving many unemployed. Rajesh, after trying to keep his job for a while, also fell into unemployment. To sustain the family, Rajesh used his savings, but as the situation could not last forever, the savings eventually ran out. At that time, Rajesh had no choice but to sell his house in the US. After selling the house, Rajesh decided to return to India with his family. However, Anupama continued to keep in touch with Rajesh's friends over the phone, and this caused a major argument that led to a conflict between Rajesh and Anupama. The arguments escalated and the couple took the matter to the family court. The court eventually decided that Rajesh would provide Anupama with 20,000 rupees per month to meet their expenses. Thereafter, Rajesh and Anupama lived together in a rented flat for a few months in a place called Governor. After some struggle, Rajesh got a job in a big company in Kolkata, about 990 miles away from his home. For the sake of his job, Rajesh had to leave his wife and 2 children and start a new life in Kolkata. In Kolkata, around 2009, Rajesh met a married woman who was suffering from an unhappy marriage. Her husband was not good and often abused her. When Rajesh heard the story of this woman, he felt sympathy for her, and gradually, the two became close friends. Gradually, their friendship developed into love. After some time, they decided to marry each other secretly at a temple in Kolkata, without informing any of their family or friends. Rajesh returned to his normal routine after his second marriage. He maintained regular contact with his first wife, Anupama, went to work daily, and kept his second marriage a secret from everyone. However, Anupama noticed changes in Rajesh's behavior and suspected that he was involved with another woman in Kolkata. But she was unaware that Rajesh had actually remarried. The couple continued to argue over this issue, and their relationship became so strained that Anupama started thinking about divorce. However, Rajesh successfully convinced Anupama, and they did not go through with the divorce. But when Rajesh failed to pay Anupama the court-ordered maintenance of 20,000 rupees. These financial disputes finally reached a boiling point on October 17, 2010, when Rajesh and Anupama had a huge argument. Rajesh becomes enraged and violently pushes his wife, Anupama, causing her head to hit the corner of the bed. As a result, she starts bleeding profusely. Initially, Rajesh is shocked, but moments later, he lifts a pillow from the bed and uses it to smother Anupama. However, unbeknownst to Rajesh, Anupama is already deceased. Rajesh then frantically searches for a place to hide his wife's body, aware that his children will soon return home from school. With time of the essence, he moves Anupama's body to the second bathroom in the house and locks the door. As he tries to devise a plan to dispose of the body without arousing suspicion, his children arrive home from school and ask about their mother. Rajesh fabricates a story, telling them that their mother suddenly left for Delhi. Rajesh's children believe their mother, Anupama, had gone to visit their grandparents in Delhi. However, Rajesh had other plans. While the children were in school, he went to the market and purchased several items, including a deep freezer, an electric chainsaw, a stone cutter machine, and small black envelopes. When Rajesh brought these items home, he hid them in a separate room. When the children left for school the next day, Rajesh began the gruesome process of dismembering Anupama's body with an electric saw. He closed all the doors and windows to block out the noise. According to Rajesh's statement, Rajesh cut Anupama's body into 72 pieces. He then placed each piece into black bags and carefully stored the bags in the deep freezer to prevent the smell of the deceased from spreading. This process took Rajesh several days to complete. During this time, Rajesh continued to deceive Anupama's parents and brother by making excuses whenever they called, unaware of the horrific events unfolding at his residence. Rajesh took steps to cover up Anupama's disappearance by making excuses to their neighbors and telling their children that their mother had traveled to Delhi. He also had access to Anupama's email account, which allowed him to maintain communication with Sujan Pradhan, Anupama's brother, making it seem as though Anupama was still alive. Following the murder, Rajesh took the children on a weekend trip to Mussoorie in Uttarakhand. During the trip, he would collect 2 or 3 envelopes from the fridge containing pieces of Anupama's body and dispose of them in the forests or gorge along the way. This revelation shocked everyone, and the police began searching the areas where Rajesh claimed to have disposed of Anupama's remains. After an extensive search, the police found some black bags containing body parts in the surrounding forests and gorge. Based on this evidence, Rajesh Gulati was arrested and sent to jail. Rajesh Gulati's twin children were sent to Delhi to live with Anupama's brother, Sujan Pradhan. A court had granted Sujan official custody of the children on March 7, 2011. Rajesh Gulati's father, Satyapal Gulati, appealed this decision but was unsuccessful. On November 3, 2012, the court dismissed his appeal and confirmed that Chari would retain custody of the children. Evidence provided by the police revealed the horrific nature of the crime. Rajesh Gulati had brutally murdered his wife and then cut her body into 72 pieces. After a 7-year trial, Rajesh Gulati was found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment on September 1, 2017. He was also ordered to pay a fine of 1.5 million rupees. The court ordered that 70,000 rupees of the fine would go to the state treasury, while the remaining amount would be deposited in the names of the twin children. The children would have access to this money only after they came of age. Rajesh Gulati was sentenced in a lower court, but he appealed this decision in a higher court in 2018. However, there has been no ruling on his appeal yet, resulting in his prolonged imprisonment. Hi there, investigators. It's time to uncover the truth behind another case. The case of Zara Alina. Zara Alina was born in England in the winter of 1986. As the eldest of 5 children, Zara's birth held great significance, symbolizing her mother's aspirations for a better future. Additionally, she was the first granddaughter of Radha Parvin, a distinction that earned her special respect and status within the family. Growing up, Zara was doted on by her relatives and raised in a multi-generational household. Despite their financial struggles, Zara's parents prioritized her education, believing it would provide her with a good life. Zara's family had big plans for her future, but their hopes were overshadowed by the dangers and difficulties that surrounded them, putting Zara's safety at risk. Zara had an unrelenting passion and thirst for life from a very young age. This led her to develop a love for tap dancing, a form of self-expression where each step brought out a rhythm that evoked a sense of harmony. Additionally, and swimming, which gave her a sense of freedom from the monotony of daily life. Her exquisite style and artistic approach to fashion allowed her to express her dreams through her outfits. However, these pursuits were just the beginning of her journey. Her first experience with skating ignited a new sense of freedom within her. Skating evolved into more than just a hobby for her. It became a powerful outlet for self-expression, allowing her to connect with her deepest emotions and inner self. Those close to Zara were unsurprised when she shared her aspiration to become a lawyer, driven by a desire to protect and support others. Her warm personality spread happiness and positivity, making those around her feel uplifted and inspired. Zara's eyes sparkled, and her gaze was captivating. Her curly black hair added to her striking appearance. She has a magnetic appeal, combining qualities such as passion, kindness, and courage, along with undeniable charm. As a teenager, she had the chance to explore England, visiting museums and galleries that fueled her interest in art and culture. Her travels showcased independence and unrelenting passion for knowledge and discovery. Following her initial trips, she later traveled to other parts of Europe. These adventures show that she inherited her family's passion for discovery and exploration of new things. Zara's aunt, Farah, was a significant influence on her. Unlike many others who chose to settle in the UK, Farah settled in Portugal. What captivated Zara was her aunt's work as a psychotherapist, particularly her involvement with women's organizations. As a result, Zara made it a point to visit her aunt on multiple occasions. Zara began turning her dreams into a reality when she earned admission to the University of Westminster immediately after high school graduation. She dedicated herself to pursuing her objectives, all while taking care of her mother and grandmother at the same time. Although she was short, she had endless energy and a deeply passionate personality. Zara is a compassionate person who has positively impacted the lives of many refugees forced to flee their homes due to conflict, she using her influence to speak out about their stories. She also volunteered at community canteens, aiding the homeless. Zara has a remarkable talent for understanding what others need, and she always makes time for them a priority in her busy schedule. Her easygoing personality made her a delight to be around. She frequently visited her aunt, Smee Naz, who lived nearby, often seeking her help with exam preparation, but their study sessions inevitably turned into laughter-filled moments. Those who knew Zara remember that she brought happiness wherever she went. Moreover, she was diligent, covering her own expenses and providing support to her family. Zara was a familiar face at a local clothing store, where she worked and interacted with everyone in the community, from teenagers to the elderly. Her kindness and willingness to help others were notable traits. Despite being talkative, she was a good listener and extended her generosity to all living beings, especially cats. She would often spend her own money to care for stray cats, taking them to the vet or convincing neighbors to adopt them. Zara's friend, Sanji Naira, described her as radiant and thought that her most significant gift was her ability to share optimism with others. Whenever Sanji was down, he would turn to Zara for help. Zara had a special person in her life, Carissa Peters, who was more than just a friend. They formed a strong bond as they fought together for justice and women's rights, a common goal that forged a lasting friendship despite life's obstacles. They felt a strong sense of comfort and familiarity in each other's homes and maintained a daily phone routine, using this time to share news, discuss their thoughts, and make plans for the future. After passing her exams and completing her law internship in 2002, Zara had the opportunity to work at the Crown Prosecution Service. This was a significant step toward realizing her dream of becoming a full-fledged lawyer. To achieve this, Zara persevered with her work despite facing many difficulties, including worries from her mother and grandmother, as well as financial struggles. This achievement was significant for her and for the people who believed in, supported her through the challenges she faced on her path to a better life. On her first day at the new job, Zara felt an overwhelming sense of happiness. She shared a smiley selfie with friends and family, as if announcing the start of a new chapter in her life to the world. This new job was the final piece in the puzzle of her dreams, a culmination of years of hard work. Although being an administrator might seem like a secondary role to some, it was a significant milestone for Zara. At 35 years old, she entered a new phase of her life, which sparked in her a sense of excitement and determination that filled her with a clear direction and goal. This wasn't just another working day. It marked the beginning of a new era in her life, one where she felt truly fulfilled and happy. The new job boosted Zara's confidence, and she felt it was time to start her own family. She envisioned her children living happy, protected lives filled with love and harmony. With each passing day, Zara saw herself moving closer to her dream of having a family. Her life was busy with work, volunteering, friends, and support from her mother and grandmother, who shared her home and provided care when needed. Despite her packed schedule, Zara enjoyed walking and valued her freedom of movement. She didn't let small things hold her back and would often carry a spare pair of shoes in her bag to change into sneakers when needed. Zara believed that women should be able to move freely without any obstacles or restrictions. However, a man named Jordan McSweeney, who lived nearby, posed a threat to Zara's freedom. Jordan was a few years younger than Zara, and his origins were unknown. One Saturday evening, after the sun had set, Zara was on her way to meet a friend. Despite not being in the mood, but she chose not to cancel, honoring her commitment. Zara was recognized for being extremely reliable and keeping her commitments, especially to her friends. Before leaving, she called Aunt Farah, but this time, a hint of anxiety crept into her voice. Aunt Farah cautioned Zara to be careful, and although she wasn't venturing far from home, the evening atmosphere felt unusual and unpredictable. Zara assured herself that she was familiar with every part of the city and that people knew who she was. Nevertheless, something about this evening unsettled her, making her heart beat faster, and she decided to exercise extra caution. Zara met her friend at the Ilford Big Spoon, a local bar on London's West End, at the scheduled time. Ilford in London is a vibrant and culturally diverse neighborhood ideal for evening meals and socializing. One Saturday evening, Zara and her friend came to this area. They then headed to another bar. where Zara had a couple of glasses of water. Meanwhile, Jordan was at a nearby nightclub, having one drink after another. As he drank, an idea formed in his mind, and he decided to act on it. He was determined to find a woman to attack that night. Security cameras captured Jordan's behavior at the club's entrance, where he would hug and try to kiss women without their consent. He was particularly aggressive with one employee, despite her clear discomfort. Eventually, he was kicked out of the club around 11 p.m., and his behavior was recorded on camera. After leaving the club, cameras continued to capture Jordan's actions as he walked down Romford Street towards the park. As Jordan walked, he spotted a woman and began to follow her. Jordan approached her, and she tried to avoid him by entering a store. However, Jordan waited for her outside, and when she left the store, he followed her again. He then crossed the street, keeping her in sight. When the woman entered her house, Jordan was forced to continue on his way. According to security footage, around 2 a.m. on Cranbrook Street, Jordan noticed another woman approaching him. Suddenly, Jordan quickened his pace, approaching a woman. However, two passing witnesses noticed his suspicious behavior, which was captured on video. Despite this, the woman managed to return home safely, leaving Jordan surprised and frustrated. He then returned to Cranbrook Street, having been unsuccessful. Around the same time, Zara and her friend decided to leave the bar and head home. It was 2 a.m. Her friend took a taxi, but Zara chose to walk, given the short distance and pleasant weather. As they parted ways, Zara began walking down Cranbrook Street, a residential area just a 10-minute walk from her house. It was then that Jordan spotted her. According to Chief Inspector Dave Williams, Jordan had a clear intention that night to attack a woman, regardless of the location. Cranbrook Street remained busy, even in the early hours, with a steady flow of traffic. Jordan had a history of offenses dating back to 2006 to 2009, for which he was sentenced in a Kent juvenile court at the age of 13. In August 2010, at the age of 17, he was found guilty of assaulting a girl, causing her to suffer a swollen eye. He received a 4-month detention and correction period as a result. 11 years after his initial offense, Jordan committed another crime against a woman, resulting in a 3-year ban from approaching her, either directly or indirectly. By 2010, he had a total of 28 convictions for 69 different offenses. These offenses included theft, assault on both police officers and the general public, motor vehicle theft, traffic infractions, committing crimes while out on bail, and shoplifting. Jordan used a social media platform to boast about his extensive collection of weapons and glorify a life of crime. He shared various photos and quotes, as well as fake images claiming the FBI was searching for him. After being imprisoned for crimes including criminal damage, racially aggravated harassment, and carrying a bladed weapon, Jordan was released on parole on June 17, 2022. One of the conditions of his parole was to regularly meet with his assigned parole officer. Following his release, Jordan resided in a van on St. Valentine Street, located in a 130-acre park in the Gun Hill area of London's Redbridge district, the largest green space in the region. Jordan broke all the rules of his parole and missed 2 scheduled meetings with his parole officer. As a result, the authorities decided not to show him any mercy. On June 22, 2022, the parole service started the process to send Jordan back to prison, but they didn't notify the police until 2 days later. On the morning of Saturday, June 25, 2022, police went to his mother's house to arrest him, only to find he was not there. In the early hours of June 26, 2022, a horrific crime occurred in Ilford. Zara was discovered on the sidewalk, displaying signs of abuse, with her belongings scattered around her. Her body showed evidence of severe injuries, her clothes were torn, and her eyes indicated a desperate struggle for survival. A passerby immediately recognized the gravity of the situation and began administering chest compressions and CPR in an attempt to save Zara's life. Despite the efforts of passers-by and emergency medical responders, Zara's injuries proved too severe. She fought for her life but ultimately passing away at 9:58 a.m. on Sunday. At approximately 11 a.m., security cameras in the park captured Jordan disposing of evidence, including his clothes, with an air of indifference and calmness. This behavior suggested that the act of violence was premeditated rather than random. The police swiftly responded and visited Zara's grandmother, asking her to identify her granddaughter from video footage taken at the bar. Upon confirmation of Zara's identity, the police informed her grandmother about the incident. Zara's uncle Qasim then contacted other family members, including Aunt Farah in Portugal, to break the news. Farah recalled receiving the distressing call on Saturday night, which prompted her to immediately travel to London. The family was deeply shocked and struggling to cope with the intense sadness of Zara's passing. Concurrently, detectives initiated an investigation in the area where Zara's body was found. They began by gathering footage from surveillance cameras to reconstruct the attacker's movements. The combination of video evidence and bloody fingerprints discovered near the crime scene enabled the identification of Jordan as the primary suspect. Utilizing a video surveillance system, the police tracked Jordan's location and obtained images of him. Inspector Dave dispatched an officer to Gun Hill to verify if anyone recognized Jordan. The operation yielded swift results, as Jordan was found sleeping in his van shortly thereafter. The authorities immediately arrested Jordan, who was found with blood-stained clothes and shoes that he was trying to dispose of. Despite lengthy interrogations, he refused to speak or reveal any information about himself. Meanwhile, new video footage emerged, allowing police to piece together the incident surrounding the crime. The incident led parole officer Justin Russell to criticize the handling of Jordan's case, highlighting a series of errors. Jordan has a criminal history dating back to the age of 16 and has been in prison several times, making him a subject at high risk of committing a crime. After being released from detention, he missed several scheduled supervision appointments. Authorities failed to take prompt action to return him to prison. Zara's family described the last few days as incredibly shocking, acknowledging that their loss was irreparable. However, in the face of such grief, they were touched by the warmth and kindness people have shown. The family faced a significant amount of work and needed to find the strength to cope. Aunt Farah took charge of communicating with the media and meeting with the police. Even though they were dealing with their own shock and grief, the family understood that taking control of the situation was crucial to protect Zara from possible accusations by some media outlets. A preliminary hearing for the Jordan case occurred on July 1, 2022. A subsequent hearing was scheduled for September 30, 2022, to prepare testimonies for the trial. However, the trial was postponed because Jordan did not appear on the scheduled day. On July 2, a memorial service was held for Zara, organized by her family. The service took place along the route Zara would have taken home, representing her final, unfinished journey. Many attendees wore white to symbolize a silent walk. Over 120 organizations that specialize in supporting women attended, showing solidarity in the fight against violence. These organizations collaborated with Zara Alina's family and publicly pushed for justice and accountability. They stressed that it's crucial to address violence against women and stopping perpetrators from committing such acts. During a preliminary hearing at East London Court in Walthamstow, crime scene investigator Nadia Persat testified. She stated that local police officers could have done more to locate Jordan before he attacked Zara. Persat believes the jury should investigate this matter further. On November 16, 2022, Jordan failed to appear at the hearing, despite being informed that his attendance was mandatory. As a result, a video call was arranged, during which he pleaded guilty. Prosecutor Oliver Glasgow argued that Jordan would be unfit for bail, and Judge Chima Grave agreed. The judge postponed the verdict until December 14th of the same year. However, as that date approached, Jordan failed to appear in court. Despite his absence, Jordan was eventually convicted and sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 33 years for the murder of Zara Alina. Jordan and his representatives appealed the sentence, which was subsequently reduced to 33 years in prison. The judge took into account that Zara was unconscious at the time of her death and therefore did not experience any suffering, which was a key factor in the decision to reduce the sentence. For months after the incident, it was revealed that Jordan had a personal relationship with a 32-year-old woman who worked at the Belmarsh Correctional Facility in South London. The woman, who was not a direct employee of the prison services but worked at the facility, was arrested and investigated for suspected misconduct in a public office. Zara Alina's family still fondly remembers her with love and pride. Her aunt, Farah, continues to advocate against violence towards women and girls. In March 2023, Farah participated in a march organized by various groups to raise awareness about the issue.